Hello and good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to all participants to the second Munich Hydrogen Summit, jointly hosted by Farley Williams and KGAL. Together with my partners from the Munich, Hamburg and Madrid offices of Farley and with Thomas Engelmann from KGAL as our co-host, I am pleased to welcome a huge number of participants online, as well as all those of you valuable guests who join us today in person here in our premises in Munich. Almost exactly 1 year ago, just after expiry of COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, we held the first Munich Hydrogen Summit, which was a huge success, and we received excellent feedback on the way we are looking at hydrogen projects, investments, and financing. This feedback is the reason why we are here today. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate that you made it. Although we are no longer the only hydrogen event, we promise we are still one of the leading events. Watson, Farley and Williams, for those of you who did not come across us yet, is known as an international law firm for advising its clients with a distinct knowledge of the topics which are relevant for the financing industry. Watson Farley lawyers understand how the technology underlying the transactions works, what the relevant framework and business case look like, and what the specific economic drivers are. Today, to give you an example, Watson Farley teams work with international organized teams on various interesting hydrogen projects. To give you an example, a team involving my partners Heike Trischmann and Max Böhmke, who are also here in presence today, works in Namibia to establish a framework for large-scale hydrogen export involving pipeline transport, as well as ammonia and synthetic fuels generation and carbon capture. So all those hot topics associated with hydrogen they are working on. Further, we also support regional projects, such as the Wasserstoffanwendungszentrum Pfeffenhausen here in Bavaria, where we are advising the public authorities. We also advise, for example, the new High Perspective project in Bavaria, aiming at identifying projects and potentials for generation and distribution of hydrogen. And as you have seen from the press media, we also recently advised GP Joule in respect of hydrogen-driven heavy vehicles. Please feel free to reach out to myself or my valuable colleagues if you want to learn more about our current activities. Today, we will focus on green hydrogen, its generation, transport, import, consumption, and to all the various financial investments and financing opportunities associated therewith. Last year, we had focused on more regional activities in the hydrogen sector. This year, the focus is much broader, is far more international and covers several regions of the world when it comes to actual projects. Also, the dimensions of the projects to be reported to you today have increased substantially. Various support and financing instruments have been developed and are in the process of getting started. The so-called European Hydrogen Bank and the integration of the H2 Global auctioning system is one outstanding example, therefore. Another one is the start of the Carbon Contracts for Difference program, which we Germans prefer to call climate protection contracts. So, is hydrogen the solution for all problems on this lovely planet? No, but it is, and this may be a surprisingly precise statement for you from hearing from a lawyer. Believe me, it is inevitable to switch substantial parts of energy consumption in different sectors to hydrogen. Hydrogen is an energy carrier with many use cases. It is the basic product for various derivatives. And this is what it makes the general topic hydrogen so interesting for many different market players. It is almost impossible to count all events, conferences, and exhibitions which look at hydrogen nowadays. This said, we are very proud to welcome so many of you to our event. This is great. Thank you so much for your valuable time and your interest in our agenda. And most important, to our valuable speakers who will talk you through the next hours. Before I give you some further quick organizational information, I hand over to our co-host, represented by Thomas Engelmann from KGAL. Thomas.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Watson 5. Thank you for the really great organization. It's a virtual situation of we look forward in this way and looking in this way, and the people are sitting here. So yeah, we can manage that. Thanks a lot, first of all, for having us and leading the show for green hydrogen. As I started discussing about some market partners 6 to 7 years back, everybody was saying, what are you telling me, Thomas? This is crazy. This can never happen. Now we are in the middle of the transformation because we realized if we as renewable, let's say, experts decarbonize, the electricity sector is nice, but it's definitely not what we think about decarbonization goals, what we have now in Europe. The problem is Europe alone, Germany alone will not make the show. We need a combination of these kind of instruments also with other international projects. And here we will definitely see today a couple of very interesting ones. And we also see what Dr. Bauer said. Also the politicians, also the players from Brussels realize more and more it has to be a combination of projects within Europe and something outside of Europe. From the pure capital markets perspective, for sure, it's so nice to have a very high IRR in a project in Germany secured by a bank guarantee and so on. Nice, but this is a dream, will not happen. And you will never find the big projects what we have because solar and wind definitely in this room is hot, but it's not what we mean on we can produce energy. So a couple of projects, majority of projects will also come outside, and I think this event here also shows a little bit what's outside of Europe happening. As here, as an information, because I was now asked more and more, the KfW, for example, went out with an EU competitive approach to find a fund manager for getting grants into markets, into development countries. So last week it was decided KGAL will be the fund manager for this fund organized by us, KfW, as the client. Good. So much to say. I would highly appreciate to have a very good and intensive talk with you, also going into discussions. And I would hand over then for the organization to Dr. Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Engelmann. So here's some brief information about today's program before we immediately start with our first valuable speaker. What will come? After the opening remarks now, we will begin with the presentations, each of which will last about 15 minutes. At the beginning, we will briefly introduce the respective speaker to you before the presentation starts. You will have the opportunity to ask questions. Those of you who are attending in presence, we will provide you with a microphone so that everyone online is also able to hear your questions. And those of you who are joining us online, please use the function, the Q&A function at the bottom of the live stream. Myself, I will try to monitor all Q&A questions. And please apologize if I'm not able to capture each and every individual question raised. We promise to try to answer all of those afterwards. Please make sure that you include your email address if you wish us to reply to you individually. We will have a 30 minutes break, which is definitely required due to increasing temperatures here in lovely Munich. In this break, you have the opportunity to grab a coffee or cup of tea if you are here in presence. Those of you who will join us online will have the opportunity to respond to a few questions in an online questionnaire we have put together. You will receive the results of our mini survey once it is evaluated, and I promise you we will be fast on that. After the break, we will have further presentations before we start with an interactive panel discussion, including additional hydrogen experts and their views. After the panel discussion, for those in the room, there will be plenty of opportunity to discuss and get some cold drinks. And please note that all presentations, as well as the recording of today's event, will be made available to all participants next week. So, this said, we are now at the point where we can introduce our first speaker who is joining us online today. I hope he is already prepared. Wonderful. I'm pleased to introduce to you Till Mansmann, member of the German Parliament and the Innovation Commissioner for Green Hydrogen of German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, who joins us from Berlin today. I think you are involved in the so-called Sitzungswoche at present. So it's very great that you found the time to join our event today. For you, as an information, Mr. Mansmann is a permanent guest on the State's Secretary's Committee for Hydrogen, as well as the National Hydrogen Council. He is responsible for directing the focus of BMBF's relevant research, development, and transfer activities. He cooperates with the key stakeholders in politics, industry, and science, and contributes new ideas to public discourse. Since 2017, Mr. Mansmann is member of the German Bundestag with full membership of the Finance Committee and the Committee for Economic Cooperation and Development, in which he is the parliamentary spokesperson for the Liberal Party FDP. Today, he will give us an update on the long-awaited amendments and updates of the German hydrogen strategy. Mr. Mansmann, it's a pleasure to hand over the word to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer, Mr. Engelmann. It's right, I'm right in between my session week here in Berlin. Dear participants of this second Munich Hydrogen Summit, the hydrogen future starts now. The German government's goal is clear. German hydrogen technologies are to become the gold standard worldwide. We want to be a pioneer in technologies for the automated production of large-scale electrolysers. And we will not be denied our pioneering role in the areas of transport and distribution, storage, and utilization. A rapid ramp-up of the hydrogen economy requires binding standards, certifications, and planning certainty for investments, if possible worldwide. Being a global pioneer and thus leader in this field, through experience, research, and development, can be a decisive competitive advantage. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we want to exploit. When I talk about universal standards and certifications, I mean a clearly understandable framework. This starts with reliable and a universal definition of low CO2 hydrogen across all countries. But it also applies to all other areas of the value chain. So it's not about establishing a single technology as the standard. In order to remove the hurdles to the hydrogen economy and to make speed in the ramp up, we must remain open to technology. I would like to explain the reasons for this very briefly using the example of hydrogen transport. Hydrogen can be transported in different ways. There are already many ways in which hydrogen can get to customers, be in liquid, gaseous, or in form of derivatives. In addition, there are different transport vectors, such as pipeline, ship, train, truck, and distances. When we talk about hydrogen transport, we mean distances between import, for example, from Australia, and distribution to the end user. If we link transport, form, vector, and distance, many possibilities arise. And each of these possibilities has advantages and disadvantages. It would be a big mistake to limit ourselves to just one technology. That's why the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research has launched projects to research the fundamentals of a transportation infrastructure. Today, I would like to briefly introduce TransHyd, one of our 3 hydrogen flagship projects. Here, research and industry, large companies, SMEs, and suppliers are working together on possible solutions for the transport and storage of hydrogen. The partners want to test various options in for demonstration projects. Specifically, the hydrogen transport, first in high-pressure vessels, second in existing and new gas pipelines, third in ammonia, and fourth, hydrogen bonded in LOHC. And the partners are also taking a very close look at how the hydrogen gets to the consumers. In the market town of Hohenwart, near Ingolstadt, 10 private households and 1 commercial customer will be connected to the hydrogen network from September. Therefore, TransHyd is converting an existing gas network to 100% hydrogen on a test basis and demonstrating heating with hydrogen on a small scale. In addition, the lead project TransHyd is dedicated to the systematic framework for transport and storage. For example, the partners want to identify scenarios for a future infrastructure and deal with standards and security aspects. The BMBF is funding the projects of the more than 80 partners with more than 120 million euros. Despite all the efforts of the German research community and industry, we will not be able to meet Germany's demand for low CO2 hydrogen on our own. The National Hydrogen Strategy assumes a hydrogen demand of around 100 terawatt-hours by 2030. We will probably have to import about half of this, or even more. The Research Ministry has therefore already reached out for suitable partners and an early stage. In the future, we could import green hydrogen from wind and sun-rich areas of the world, such as Africa or Australia. At the same time, the conversion of the energy supply to sustainable energy sources is a challenge that affects all countries. We therefore see a large market here for technologies from Germany that can be used and are in demand worldwide. The future of hydrogen is starting now, and not just in Germany. Many parts of the world are setting out on the road to a climate-neutral future. Hydrogen is a crucial building block for this, and we keep in the master builders. Let us speed up the ramp-up together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansmann. This was a very quick speech. Thank you very much to give us an insight in your current activities and this interesting project TransHyd. It's very good to see that hydrogen and its use cases are getting real, and they, as I understand from you, will get operational already this September, which is a very good news. From my side, it's very interesting to hear that one of the strategy elements, that's the way I understood it, is technology neutrality. Perhaps please allow me to raise one question from our side. Today, here are several investors and market players who are thinking about where to invest best when we talk about green hydrogen and hydrogen environmental structures. What is your view, or what would you say when you are considering, or if you try to take the look of an investor who asks himself, what technology will in the end be successful, and how to invest and how to support the start of hydrogen economy in Germany?
Yes, of course, finally, to be technology neutral from the state's point of view means not to say the investors where to invest. I cannot say that. Of course, there are a lot of possibilities. I think hydrogen, the transformation will not work without hydrogen. This is the main message I can tell you. I'm very sure that an all-electric world is not, especially for Germany, for a country which has a lot of sun in summer and a lot of dark days in winter. And if you have no wind in winter, then you have a problem. And we need hydrogen for this. And also Germany is a country which will have the need of import of energy and in the future of clean energy, which means hydrogen in a very huge scale. So there are a lot of things investors can be used or have very good business cases, I'm quite sure. But nobody knows exactly, of course, if the transportation will be made with ammonia or with very cold hydrogen or under high pressure. Of course, the Federal Ministry of Education Research, we had some studies, and we know the most efficient way to transport hydrogen is by pipeline. And our neighboring continent, Africa, has a lot of opportunities to produce clean hydrogen, much more clean energy than this continent needs for itself, really much more. And Europe, especially Germany, needs energy. So I think all business cases for import structure. See, the fossil energy market is really a huge market, and it made a lot of countries rich, where oil and gas is in the earth. In the future, a lot of countries can become rich who have sun and wind. but we need a lot of invests to get this clean energy into molecules and to transport them, especially, for example, to Germany, which needs a lot of energy. You see, 100 terawatt hours of green hydrogen by 2030, and this amount will be doubled and more in the time to 2045, when we want to be climate neutral. There's a lot of opportunity, and of course, a lot of things the state has to do, because infrastructure, the transportation of hydrogen from the ports, incoming the German ports, or maybe the ports of Netherlands or Belgium, where the ships come, to transport it then at first to the north and the west of Germany, and then to distribute it all over the country. This is a question of infrastructure, and it's of course the state who has to organize this.
Thank you, Mr. Mansmann. I just want to remind our audience, also the online audience, that there is the possibility to ask questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A function. Mr. Mansmann has agreed that we have some opportunity now to ask questions, so please feel free to raise yours. In the meanwhile, I also asked the audience who is attending here in person. I think perhaps Max Böhmke, do you want, as a regulatory expert, take the opportunity to ask one of the responsible politicians some initial questions?
Yeah, thank you, Christian. Very, very kind. Yeah, a rather simple question, I hope. When will be expected an updated hydrogen strategy? You can tell something about the timing as to when to expect something being published?
Yeah, we all expected the hydrogen strategy by the end of the past year. So we are late with this strategy. Of course, there are reasons for. We are late because we had a lot of things to discuss. Because I think this update of the first issue of this strategy by the past government from 2020 has a lot of changes. For example, the colors of hydrogen. We now have blue hydrogen, orange hydrogen inside the strategy. This is new. And we had a lot of discussions about the hydrogen net, the network to transport hydrogen. But I think that we will get the final version of the new update before the summer break, which means this week. But you cannot be absolutely sure. You can be sure the day when it's finished, when everybody agrees. And to be honest, it's not today that every ministry which is involved agree to the new text. You see, there are 4 ministries in the lead. One is technically lead is in the Ministry of Economy and Climate Action, and in all, about 10 ministries are involved. So of course, there are a lot of discussions. But in the moment, I can tell you, it's just about single words and sentences.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansmann. Believe me, as lawyers, we know that the week is only over when it is Sunday, 24 hours, 24 p.m. One further question from the audience. I hand it over to the microphone. Perhaps you state your name and ask the question.
My name is Martin Wirth from Munich Credit. I have a question regarding the support scheme. I fully agree hydrogen is happening now. And it's also good to see that the delegated acts have been in place. Now we know how green hydrogen is defined. But still, the gap of commerciality is there. And we also have support programs like the CFD scheme and so on. But here in Europe, there's a lot of support, but it's pretty fragmented. There is many programs here and there, and the rules are different. And some clients tell us you need a specialized department to find their way through all this subsidy and supported jungle. And then last autumn, the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States was published, and that at least at the first glance looks pretty simple. Up to $3 tax credit per each kilogram of hydrogen produced. And what I can now hear is from our client base, they are thinking of moving the investments from here to the United States. Now, I have two questions for you. Can you also observe a trend or a shift of European investments to the United States where the support scheme is allegedly more simple? And second, is there, let's say, some movement to make the European support scheme simpler for the everyday user?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and to be honest, not easy to answer it, because I also can see that the charming solution of the Americans with the IRA. It's very simple, it's very clever, and it's a way which is not suitable for Europe, because in Europe you have 27 states with different systems, and we had a lot of work to take the countries out of the competition of the common market we have. This is a problem the United States don't have, and it's very clever to use it. So I don't think that would be an intelligent idea to copy this for Europe. It wouldn't work. And of course it concerns me, or it concerns us, how to have an answer. To say it optimistically or positive, it's good to see that the United States also want to have this hydrogen economy, because it makes sense. Everybody now can see this. This is not so common in Europe. When I was first elected in Bundestag by 2017, nobody talked about hydrogen, and this changed maybe in 2020 with the first strategy. And before, people were talking about champagne of the energy future, and now everybody knows it's different. And I hope the competition with the United States will make Europe a bit more flexible. But it's indeed a question which has to be solved in Brussels, so between the member states, and not only in Berlin. This is good news and bad news in one, of course, because if Europe is united, then it's a strong player. But the solutions of the European Union are sometimes a bit, how to say, academic, very complicated. They have a kind of intellectual charming, but not really pragmatic. I, of course, hope that Europe now, as we say in German, hears the shot, and becomes more and more pragmatic. But of course, questions of regulation are in Brussels and not in Berlin. So my work is to tell my government to be more for pragmatic solutions and bring them to Brussels, and try to get more other member states on our side with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mansmann. One further questions from our online audience. Mr. Mansmann, could you kindly share your thoughts on the amount of financing needed by the German government to implement the infrastructure to start or develop the hydrogen growth in Germany? And will this financing be shared with neighboring countries such as the Netherlands?
I do not think that state money is finally the real solution. The transformation needs really hundreds of thousands of billion euros till 2045. Alone for Germany, and of course for Europe, then 2 or 3 times more. This needs to be money from private economy. The state's thing is not to invest. The countries, the state, they have to make the regulations and to help with good law, and maybe taking the risks. I think for the ramp up of the economy and for the start of the European hydrogen network, the state needs to define how this network should look like and find partners in industry to finance it, and then to take some risks with that. And this may cause costs of some billion, tens of billions of euros. But finally, all the transformation is much more expensive, but necessary. And we want that to be brought by private investors finally.
Thank you, Mr. Mansmann. Are there any further questions in the audience? I think that's not the case. So thank you very much, Mr. Mansmann, for this interesting view on the political approach on how to enhance the hydrogen or the development of the hydrogen environment. Good luck for the next days. We will closely follow the media to get further information about this hydrogen strategy. I think I can speak for all of our people in the audience here. It is a crucial element to have security on the framework for further investments in hydrogen. I think what we also feel and what our perception of the industry is, there is a big ambition, a big willingness to support all those transitional processes, also from the private finance perspective. And it would be great if you could continue your valuable efforts to support this, also in Berlin and as we learned in Brussels. Good luck with that and many thanks, Mr. Mansmann.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your summit. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. This was our first speaker for today. We had a brief overview about this upcoming political instruments, which will surely support our hydrogen projects further. There is more to say from a regulatory perspective, and I'm happy to announce our next speakers for today. This is a speech or presentation jointly held by two of my partners, Dr. Maximilian Böhmke, who is joining us in presence here today, is a partner in the Regulatory, Public Law and Competition Group at our Hamburg office. He has a strong focus on the energy sector, including conventional, but also renewable and grid-related aspects. Maximilian has extensive experience in advising clients on all kinds of regulatory matters and the drafting and negotiation of supply and trading, as well as project contracts. He is also regularly working on M&A and finance transactions. He regularly represents clients in energy-specific litigation and arbitration procedures. So if you have a problem, please feel free to reach out. Maximilian today is joined virtually by David Diaz, a partner in our WFW regulatory group, who is based in Madrid. I'm looking forward to hear him to report about one of the most emerging markets for hydrogen, which is Spain. David specializes in regulated sectors and public law, with wide experience advising in the energy, environment, waste, public infrastructure, and public procurement sectors. He has a wealth of experience advising companies and financial institutions pursuing regulated activities, as well as advising on financing, sale, and purchase of renewable energy assets, such as wind farms, biomass plants, photovoltaic, and thermosolar energy facilities, but also hydrogen. Today, Maximilian and David will give us an update on the regulatory framework for green hydrogen. David, handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. Good afternoon, and a warm welcome also from my side. We'll start this presentation by giving you all a short update on what has happened and a short recap also on what has happened. And I will briefly touch upon what to expect in Germany. And then David will give his view on the Spanish market and particular regulatory insights of the Spanish market. And the reason for that is, as Christian said, one of the most evolving markets we see currently is Spain, in particular with regard to hydrogen. Now, if we look at what has happened, as you are all aware, the delegated acts have been published 6 months ago, and I think a few days ago, they became final and binding because the period for the European Council to raise an objection has passed without such objection being raised. So the markets always said, now we know what's in the delegated acts, and we always, as lawyers, said, wait, they can still be cancelled. That's unrealistic, or was unrealistic, but it could have happened. So now they are the delegated acts, they are final and binding. And let's take a brief look as to what is into there. For some of you, it might be a recap, but as we will see in the presentation after this one, for a hydrogen project or a renewable fuel project, these are mandatory to know inside out. So when we look at the delegated acts on green hydrogen, we have we are talking about the delegated acts. It's two. It's one delegated act which tells us when power is supposed to be green, and this power is used to produce hydrogen. That's what's in the first one. And the other one is on the methodology, which is used to calculate emission savings in any given renewable fuel project or green fuel, renewable fuels of non-biological origin project. And in particular, the second one, which I will only touch briefly upon, is a bit overlooked, but there are very interesting things also in that one in particular, as we will come to that later if you look at green fuel projects, because that one is telling you how your CO2 supply needs to be set up. But the first one, as I said, delegated act on green hydrogen, tells you something about how and when is power which is used for hydrogen production regarded as green. Well, and there are 4 scenarios, and I will not go into each and every detail of the slides. You can see the slides online later on, but what I will tell you that the renewable PPA, this is the standard case. Your hydrogen electrolyzer receives electricity from the public grid, and you have, as a hydrogen producer, concluded a power purchase agreement with a operator of a renewable plant. There are 4 or 3 very, very important requirements to be met. That's the requirements on an additionality, temporal correlation, and geographical correlation. That means that the renewable plant, the additionality requirement means that the renewable plant must not come into operation more than 36 months before the electrolyzer. Effectively, that means if I have an electrolyzer, I need a new wind farm, or I need a new solar plant. That was something where Germany opposed heavily against it and lost this case in the EU. Because that means all the wind farms which go out of operation in Germany can't be used to produce green hydrogen. The reason for that is, and it's important to understand that, the reason for that is that one would say we will see a battle for electricity in the upcoming future, for green electricity. And it wasn't, the idea behind this additionality requirement is that you, as a producer of green hydrogen, you don't want to go into competition with e-vehicles, with charging stations for green power. So there's an additionality requirement that means something like bring your own plant, if you will. Another requirement was that no public support for the renewable plant has been received. This is the no EEG rule, as we've said in the past. And the reason for that is, again, once you have received money from the public to support your energy production, you are out of the game for green hydrogen. That has something to do with market structures, but there are transitional rules applying. So if you're very fast with your hydrogen project, this rule doesn't apply to you. And that's a huge game changer for the PPAs which come into question for any given project. There are certain exemptions to the requirements which I've just matched. The one which has been discussed a lot in the media is the low carbon bidding zone, which France is about to meet the requirements for the reasons of their atomic power. In the northern parts of the EU, in particular Sweden, this threshold is also met, and that means the no public funding rule doesn't apply, and that's something which is also very important if you're looking for money to invest in which countries, where do you receive the energy, where is it cheapest, and then these exemptions come into play. There's a temporal correlation, which I will briefly also touch upon, and this temporal correlation says your energy and the hydrogen must be produced basically at the same time, within the same hour, or in earlier times within the same month. This is for not adding additional problems to the grid. The geographical correlation says that the renewable plant must basically locate in the same bidding zone. You can't have a renewable plant in the Czech Republic and the electrolyzer sitting in France. That won't work because they're not sitting in the same bidding zone. And that is also has to do with, it's still quite problematic in the EU to transport electricity from one EU country or from one bidding zone to another bidding zone. One very important point which I want to mention before I hand over to David is member states are allowed to introduce additional criteria. And that is something which is also often overlooked when you see charts for projects, because it's RED II compliant when you say, well, yeah, is it also compliant for Germany? And the answer to that is we still don't know, because we're still expecting the transformation rules into German law. For Germany, we discussed it with the ministry yesterday. They said, well, we don't know when the amendment to the 37th emission ordinance will come, but we're expecting it. Now, with that said, I will happy to hand over to David, which I hope hears us and will bring us an overview for the Spanish market. Hi, David, good to see you.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for inviting me to give an overview about the Spanish situation of the market. Well, I mean, Max has focused on the giving a brief overview of the requirements from the delegated act to consider the hydrogen as green. And as Max has introduced, I have to say that my personal feeling is that the perception of how these requirements has been, let's say, seen by the market are different depending on the specific situation of the different European markets for the developing of renewable projects. In the case of Spain, our perception is that the delegated act has been very welcome, in the sense that there were, I would say, a boom of hydrogen projects under development. It is true that there are some operational projects in Spain, but following the announcements from the Spanish government supporting the creation, I would say, not only an industry for Spain, but to some extent, the main goal of Spain is to convert the country as a hub for the production of green hydrogen, for not only for Spain but also for other countries on the European Union, is that there was a problem at the beginning when structuring these projects, because there was no legal certainty about the requirements for the green hydrogen. So our perception, what we are seeing in the firm, is that this delegated act, which I mean, at least give us a clear guidelines and rules in order to determine when the production of hydrogen is considered green hydrogen, and this is, I think, very positive. Considering the let's say the requirements, I mean, as in the case of Germany, in Spain, we are not in an electricity system that can be considered decarbonized, in the sense that our renewable production is around 50% last year. So it's quite far from the requirement of the 90%. Also, in terms of the emissions, this requirement of the 18% of emissions of grams per of equivalent monoxide of carbon per megajoule, we are quite far also. So we have to meet, or the projects that will be developed in Spain must comply with the requirements in terms of local geographical location, in terms of additionality, and in terms of the correlation monthly and then hourly by 2030. There are what we are seeing in the market is that there are 4 different schemes in order to structure this type of projects. One alternative, I would say, is the sizing of the electrolyzer, taking into consideration the peak power of the renewable plant or plants that are connected to this hydrogen for the production to the electrolyzer for the production of hydrogen. The other one is, let's say, to oversize the cluster of renewable generation in order to maximize as much as possible the hours of the functioning of the electrolyzer. It is true that what we are seeing is that at the end of the day, when we discuss with clients their financial models, I would say that it is not the best alternative, let's say, to maximize the production of the electrolyzer at the maximum level of hours that can work, because at the end of the day, the cost of electricity has an impact of circa 70–80% of the final cost of the hydrogen, and therefore it is important when modeling to take into consideration the price of production. So not the maximum production implies that it is the best financial case, but some oversize of the renewable generation could give, let's say, more flexibility in order to increase the capacity of production. The third alternative that we are seeing is to combine by hybridization, or even in attaching storage solutions for the part of the generation, would be, let's say, as an alternative that could give flexibility and also allow the developers and producers to comply with the requirements from the Delegated Act. And last but not least, what is to some extent embed all the different alternatives for structuring these projects in order to comply with the Delegated Act that we are seeing, is look not only in the short term, but also in the mid-term, assuming that taking into consideration the huge amount of projects, of renewable projects that are already under development in Spain. We are currently with favorable environmental impact declarations of circa 55 gigawatts of wind and solar projects. It is true that these projects probably will not be achievable, let's say, or eligible to comply with the requirements of additionality, but such huge amount of renewable generation entering into the system in the next 3–4 years will, let's say, have an impact on the prices of electricity. And that means that the expectation is that in the mid-term, short mid-term, in many hours in Spain, the prices of electricity would be below 20 euros per megawatt hour. And that would imply, and that would give flexibility in the sense that in order to comply with the requirements from the Delegated Act, there would be two alternatives. The first one would be the dedicated connection from renewable projects to the electrolyzer, but as well the connection to the electrolyzer to the grid, and consumption when the price of electricity is below 20 euros per megawatt hour would be, let's say, a reasonable scenario in the midterm. So taking all of this into consideration, I would say that the perception of the sector here in Spain with respect to the Delegated Act is a very positive, has been very positive welcome. There are some standing points which needs to be implemented, at least in Spain. The first one is the coordination between the requirements of the Delegated Act with the system of guarantees of origin. The system of, I think Spain has been quite pioneer when implementing the systems of guarantees of origin for green hydrogen, which was put in place by our gas system operator, our TSO Enagas, by the end of March. And I just, for the debate, I give us a question because it is something that we have been discussing, particularly myself with client and with the team. Maybe a clarification from the European authorities on whether these requirements from the Delegated Act would apply, let's say, to the whole sectors that in which the green hydrogen are potentially be applicable. I'm saying this because the Delegated Act is a development of a section of the European Directive RID 2, in which it is stated that the regulations for calculating the minimum quota of renewable energy for the sector of transport must be further developed by a Delegated Act. And at the end of the day, this Delegated Act establish the requirements to consider renewable fuels from non-biological origin as green for the purpose of calculating and meeting the quotas that has been established in the directive. But it is focused on transport. I think that we can all let's say, assume and be aligned in that the same requirements would be applicable, let's say, for the use of green hydrogen for other sectors like industry, metallurgic, refinery, whatever. But I think that a clarification in this regard from the European authorities would be what would eliminate, let's say, any doubt of legal uncertainty in this regard. And finally, we can move to the next slide. It's just a summary of, let's say, how the approach that we have here in Madrid, in the Madrid office, when we discuss with investors and developers how to structure this type of projects. I think we are quite far, at least in Spain, to have, let's say, a dedicated and single grid network for green hydrogen. And therefore, what we are seeing is that the off-taker, to have, let's say, visibility on the off-take is key to make or to design a successful project. What we are seeing also, as I mentioned, is that there is a boom on the development of green hydrogen projects. So on the one hand, but the offtake is quite limited in the sense, leaving aside transport, the consumption, I mean, the potential offtakers here in Spain are metallurgy, steel industry, petrochemical, and fertilizers manufacturing, which are the consumers of gray hydrogen. And on the one hand, these potential off-takers want or need to have visibility before entering into an MOU or a type of agreement that the project would be viable, let's say, and in this regard, they will request the developer about where are the renewable generation facilities located, if they have environmental constraints, the supply of water, if it is guaranteed or not. And on the other hand, the administrations, in order to, let's say, filter such huge amount of projects and, let's say, focus on the authorization process of those that have signals of being viable, will ask, and we are seeing that in practice, the first question that the administration do is, who is going to buy your offtake? Because if they do not see, let's say, visibility on the offtake, they, let's say, probably will focus and will foster other projects in which the matter of the offtake is well, let's say, designed. On the other hand, it's really, really important to find the right strategy for the supply. As I previously mentioned, the cost of the production of the green hydrogen, 70–80% is the cost of the electricity for production of such hydrogen, and therefore to have a very well-optimized and proportional supply strategy, balancing dedicated renewable generation with subscriptions of renewable PPAs, and even a supply directly from the grid of electricity that can be buy in the daily and intraday markets in those windows in which the price would be below 20 euros per megawatt would be key in order to, let's say, make a reasonable financial model. And last but not least, we are in a new industry with, at least in Spain, with a regulatory framework that was not, let's say, set up or completely set up when the development of these projects started. Just to give us a view, most of the large-scale projects that are being developed in Spain are under the umbrella of the self-consumption regulations, which were thinked or designed by the regulator to put a solar panel on the rooftops, on domestic houses, but also in industries. The truth is that such regulation works, but it is not, but to some challenges that are embedded in these complex projects are not fully solved by this regulation. So it is important to have a very good management of and advisors in order to handle with the permitting strategy, subsidies. We have, just to give you information about the support from the Spanish authorities, in March 2023 was allocated a subsidy program of up to 200 million euros for pioneer green hydrogen projects. And 2 weeks ago was called another call for the assignment of subsidies up to 150 additional million of euros. So it is important also to handle these subsidies and also the structuring of project contracts, PPAs, HPAs, and the financing, and also to identify opportunities in this, let's say, regulatory atmosphere, which is being changed with not only national and regional regulations, but also from regulations which are very relevant as the Delegated Act coming from the European Union. So I would say that these are the 4 key points that we always, let's say, discuss with developers or potential investors when we have the first meetings to analyze potential opportunities in the green hydrogen sector. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Max and David. Also from my side, there are a couple of questions on the online forum. Perhaps I summarize them up, and please feel free also to raise your question here in the audience. Question number 1 is to Max. Do you know into which or how many bidding zones Germany will be divided and what the role of ACER will be? That's a very tricky expert question.
Well, it's a question we have been asked by clients quite a lot, and we're currently advising on also in one particular case. So the discussion is to divide Germany into 2 bidding zones. And for the background, for those of you who don't know, ACER is the European group of energy regulators, and they have regular meeting to see whether the bidding zones in all Europe are still correctly, whether Europe is still divided correctly into the bidding zones. Now, within the bidding zone, you have the same energy price. So, for example, Germany is a bidding zone. The wholesale energy prices in Bavaria is the same as in northern Germany. Now, ACER says, well, that's not exactly, may not be exactly correct, because in Germany you have lots of renewable power, whereas in Bavaria you don't have it. So you have a rather strong northern-southern division where you can say, well, in terms of electricity pricing, and that's the only point ACER looks at, it might make sense to say we have a northern bidding zone in Germany and a southern bidding zone in Germany, where you have with the result of having different energy prices. Now, for northern Germany, that would be fine, because we would probably in Hamburg have lots of cheaper energy prices, where in Bavaria that would be devastating, because you would have much higher energy prices than you currently have. Now, to answer the question, and how many bidding zones will Germany be divided, and by when? The discussion is around 2 bidding zones, one northern one southern one. And there has been an official proposal by ACER to do exactly that. However, as far as we know, there's strong political opposition to this. And the political opposition to do this is really strong. And at the end of the day, the member states, i.e. Germany, would have to take the relevant measures. Therefore, to answer the question, I see that the pressure is rising, and to do something to equal out to do something about the unequalness in terms of how energies are produced in Germany, and with the strong northern very renewable heavy and southern very very conventional energy heavy. But as of now, I don't see it happening that we will divide the energy, the bidding zones in Germany, due to the strong opposition of the German government. That's at least the information we currently have.
Sounds like a very sounded answer. One question to Spain. Are there subsidies in Spain covering CapEx or ongoing subsidies during operation?
Well, yes, so far the subsidy scheme is focused on CapEx. I mean, and it is, let's say, also we have discussions with clients in this regard, that they always, to some extent, compare the subsidy scheme that is being followed not only by Spain, which is focused on CapEx, but also, let's say, with the subsidies or the subsidy scheme that will be or is being designed by this European Bank for Hydrogen, in comparison with the subsidy scheme in tax credits that is foreseen in the IRA from the United States. But the 2 programs, the one that has been already solved and the one that has been launched, the deadline for submission for this second program will end by the end of July, just for information purposes, is focused on a direct subsidy on CapEx.
Thank you very much, David. There are many more questions. I suggest that we carry some of them into the panel discussion. One for you to think about, Max, in the meanwhile, while the others will continue then, perhaps in the coffee break, will be what other laws in Germany will be changed to establish a general definition of green hydrogen. I think that's something you can comment on later, as well as the general effect of the delegated act on the demand for hydrogen. That's something I think also our financing experts can discuss later on.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment.
Just 1 second, you need to speak into the microphone.
Hi, Luke from Life. I just wanted to comment on the delegated act, to put this in German law. That will be done by the so-called 37. BIMSCH-Verordnung. And the text which we have, and of course understand that the law firm cannot work with leaked documents, but the very latest leaked document which we saw is pretty okay. and is not making worse, would I say, from our side, seen, of course, what the delegated act is saying. And our information is also that it should be voted by the end of September.
That's corresponding with the information we have with the. We spoke yesterday with the ministry, and they said, well, the point is why it's not been given out to the public in a wider group and why it's not shared with the industry yet. So if you don't have received the draft on the 37th BIMSV, relax. It has not been shared because they're between two ministries. They are still struggling whether this is correct or whether it isn't. So there will be sometimes this will be resolved and there will be a formal draft available.
Thank you very much. So all the time we gained in the very quick political intro, we lost now on the regulatory track. That's typical when you're attending a lawyer's event. But instead of letting lawyers talk to you, today the idea is let projects talk to you. Let's talk about real projects, real activities. That makes me to hand over the word to Thomas Engelmann from KGAL and again to Max Böhmke then. They will now give us a case study on the EU fuel market and a real project standing beyond that. Thank you. The word is with you.
Thank you so much, dear guests. I think now it's worth to also introduce KGAL. I have not done it in the beginning because I have now the nice slides with me. But in a nutshell, what we are doing is very clear. We have three main areas of what we are thinking. So we are niche player in the asset markets, but niche player is not always bad. It's always very good because you are then the expert in the niche because you know them. And we have definitely sustainable infrastructure, real estate, let's aside, and aviation. So we are working already since years in the aviation market. And to be honest, aviation was always to bring somebody from A to B. Never thought about what is the global footprint on CO2. Last 5 years, it changed completely. Everybody was asking, can I fly? Is it good? Should I go take an airplane or not? The thing is, why don't we combine it and say we're going to have a sustainable infrastructure department and we have also a huge know-how on aviation. So if you look here, we can clearly say the aviation market is more than known to us from KGAL, but where's the sustainable kerosene coming from? So this is where we are looking into this case study and saying very clear on the aviation part, we would from KGAL side look not only into Europe, but all over transactions. You can see here aviations for more than 900 transactions are done from aviation. But the sustainable infrastructure, we focus on Europe. And you see one market spot is still in Denmark, what we have not focused on. So today I would speak about one project in Denmark covering e-fuels. You see this word, what are FNBOs? You know, so if I speak with the experts, they can clearly give me the legal definition. The problem is, what is then the project behind? So if you speak with a technician, and I spoke, for example, last week with the CEO of Hydrogen, and from France he is, and Cyril said very clear, for me a project RFNBOs is methanol based. I said, yes, could be. I said, I have a project is electricity based. It's correct. So what is not correct? So this is a basis where we say, and what I want to show you, before we go, because we are financials, go into the project, what is our problem? You see here the production on e-kerosene, because we speak in the market of e-kerosene now. All of the, let's say, regions we see, and this comes from Bloomberg, is definitely out of the market if you combine it with the worldwide price range, what you can see here of kerosene. So that means you have to find triggering events, and the delegated acts pushing, and the RE Fuel EU is pushing now the off-takers, the Shells and so on, into the direction by 2030, you have to buy a certain element of e-fuels. Max later on will give you a more straight definition and how this looks like. But it's for us from a financing perspective and also then from the banks, an interesting part because it is not a feed-in tariff anymore. So this is done potentially with the hydrogen bank, but it's a floor. That means the off-takers by itself are forced to buy in a certain element. if the off-taker has a good reputation, if they have a good banking balance sheet, it's of interest for a non-recourse debt financing. So this means very clear, if you look to Germany, Arabic Emirates, United States, China, none of them are at the moment economically viable, okay? So it makes no sense to ask from that side. The question is different. If you have a new market on e-fuels, what is the best process? Because this will win and makes the best efficient way to produce it. And this is difficult. You see it now. I can't go into in these details. The point is, I speak today about an e-fuels project combining water and renewable electricity. But you see, e-jet and the product, let's say kerosene at the end, can be produced in different ways, but not all of them are e-fuels. Some of them are sustainable airline fuels. And RFNBOs, and I thought a lot about that, is very clear. It means non-biological origin, because the left side, what you can see here, solid biomass. If you want to transform a whole aviation sector and want to do it with biomass, you're collapsing. It will not work. So you must get access to an energy vector which is renewable, but is sustainable in production, and not wait 30 years and then you have a, so to say, CO2 neutral production facility for biomass. And this is where we think that the new markets will go into the area of the, let's call it, syngas generation, Fischer-Tropsch generation, hydrocracking. Why? This process, it looks complex, but all of the products are available. The interesting part is now to combine it now in a different way. So the hydrocracking, or we call it the refinery part, is done the last 100 years. We can produce out of a long chain of hydrocarbons, we can produce kerosene, naphtha, diesel, whatever. So this is not the cracking side of this process. The part is you need a biogenic CO2. And so whenever we look into a project, we cannot only say, oh, the water is available, the electricity is available. I think we have an e-fuels project, because the first question is, listen, where is the C molecule coming from? So you need a biogenic source. And it should be waste. What is a biogenic source based on a waste? So you must have a production on a process. You can produce biogas, biomass, and part of the CO2 you can use into this process. And then you can decide, I go the methanol route, and then you go for methanol to jet production. Or you say, no, I am really strong. I have water available near the water, near the sea. Then potentially you come to the decision to say, oh, I really focus on the Fischer-Tropsch, most efficient project size. And here another part of the size of the projects. What is a huge plant in this process? If you would ask a Shell person, he would say, listen, guys, 500 megawatt is small, it's really small compared to what we can do. But from a production size, and also if you look the delegated acts, you must get the electricity from that, okay? And this is what we have here. Let's say a project of 360 megawatt input electrolysis, input on electricity, 250 goes into the electrolyzer. The other one is supporting the balance of plant and the pipes and the pumps and so on. The transaction financials is $1 billion, is a huge project, okay? But you cannot make it directly on the same area, doubling, tripling, because you have to do an environmental assessment assessment. That means you have to look out, where is the water coming from? If it's seawater, you need a certain kind of a situation to do it. So you cannot scroll it up by doubling, tripling, and so on. So everybody at the moment is trying to find a certain standardized product. And this is something definitely what could look as, I would say, very interesting. All of these projects are in the basis of, let's say, development phase. None of them are reached financial close, but the projects will come because the market will need it, because otherwise everything what the legal is saying about the delegated act will find no products and projects. This is a project what definitely will support this kind of a market. not going in all the details, important is the off-taker are the typical off-takers. It could be a airline, it could be the airport, it could be Shell, it could be an oil and gas off-taker who is at the moment needed to bring these kind of e-fuels into their production or into their process to sell it. The process, I think, not going into the technical details, but you see the delegated act, what we have here, is now coming into the project analysis, what we do as KGAL, because we would definitely want to support that this project come to financial close. And now a last word to that. The developers are not so forced and not so interested to go directly with other developer partners, OEMs, together, because they want to be independent. They want to have the standardizing process on their own. In this project, for example, partners, what we speak with are top general managers coming from Shell, Tapsoy, coming from Sasol, so they know the process, and they say very clear to early go as a developer in contact with a potential off-taker. It's not of interest for us. We want to go better with a sustainable partner like us. The stupid thing for us is we will always ask for ESG, for Article 9, SFDR, because we are supporting the financial industry, and we want to produce here an ESG-related sustainable product. Thank you so much. Not going into details. Hand over now.
Thank you. Yeah, the point is, from a regulatory perspective, that's why the regulatory guy is once again speaking to you. When we look at a project, we talk a lot about delegated act, but what does it actually mean for a project? And there are two types of contracts where you really need to look at. And if you look into the data room of any given of these projects, you'll find an LOI or probably a draft PPA. And what I've done is I've produced a checklist, seeing is whatever it is in the delegated acts reflected in that PPA? Because if the answer to any of these questions is no, then you don't have a project. And it can't be emphasized how important that is if you read this delegated acts legal language and then find an LOE 5-pager term sheet saying, does it match or doesn't it? And that decides your project. So it's what you need to do is, what type of delivery do I have? Is it an on-site delivery? Is it a PPA from an off-site? Is based on the timeline of the project, can I rely on grandfathering provisions, on certain types of exemptions? If I do want this, then I need to make it absolutely clear that if I, at one point in time in the project, doesn't meet the timeline anymore, that there are strong guarantees to support that. Is additionality reflected? Is temporal correlation reflected? Is geographical correlation reflected? What types of security do I have? We talked about additionality. I thought, bring your own plant. Am I relaxed that my contractual partner is able to build up in the given time a wind farm or a solar plant? What is my counterparty risk? It's a different topic if I talk to a global player or whether it's a startup. And we've seen both in practice. And that's not to say one is better than the other. It's just you need to ask these questions. And one last thing, which I can't emphasize enough, the delegated acts allow for member states to add additional regulations. So at the end of the day, you need a local lawyer on the ground in whatever member state you are in, and asking, do you have any knowledge about additional requirements on national level? And each of these contracts needs to have an reopener for reflecting any additional requirements. That can make it quite tricky to negotiate these contracts, actually, because there's lots in that and lots to do with that. And it's not your normal wholesale PPA, tick the box. It's very project driven, and Thomas and I have discussed this countless of times that this is when the delegated acts really play a role. The other one is, we said CO2 sourcing is for refuels, is an enormous topic, and it's even more important than PPAs. And And the CO2 supply agreement, you have to do the same with your CO2 supply agreement. You will have a CO2 supply agreement with some form of supplier. And then it starts that mostly even the counterparty, the project developer, doesn't know that there is a methodology delegated act which gives you precise requirements as to where the CO2 can come from. We discussed the RFNBO and they said, well, yeah, but it's great. We have it from waste. And we said, yes, but non-biological origin. Do you know something? Do you? So, and that brings you into topics where they said, where in scenarios we have seen, CO2 supply suddenly becomes an issue because of 4 or 5 sources of CO2, potential sources of CO2. 3 of them are, at least not for an e-fuel project, 3 of them are not viable because they produce CO2 from biological sources. Again, that needs to be reflected in the contracts and needs to be reflected in the contract drafts. So very early on, if you look at any given e-fuel projects, and when we discussed this together, we did type of a match plan. And what we said in these discussions, move up PPA discussion and CO2 supply discussion to the top of your list, because it probably will take the longest time to actually bring this to some form of agreement. And as far as we see right now, this was correct, and that was the correct approach, because there are lots of discussions on the way with your potential supplier on timing of wind farm items in wherever it is, and delays in the production side, and so on and so forth. So what we just wanted to give you as an insight of this, if you look at, there are lots of things to do, of course, if you look at any given project, but if you want to have it refuel EU ready, or if you want to look at RED 2, RED 3 ready, then PPA supply agreements and CO2 supply agreements need to be the top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engelmann and Max. Questions in the audience? Question to you. Only minutes between us and the break. Thank you. One question from my side, perhaps. I mean, it's very interesting what you mentioned. And also, Mr. Engelmann, what I understood from your remarks, you are referring to e-fuels because you exactly see the use case for them, the demand. And that is my interesting question. Do you think that, for example, this e-fuel sector will one of the leading ones because you have a clear offtake scenario or demand side?
Here, let's say from that side, in the past, I spoke very often with technicians, and they explained me you can do everything with hydrogen. But this was not the question, okay? The question is, you have to find processes what are hard to abate. And here I would say, yes, the transport sector, and here not the battery-based EV charging stuff. This is not interesting here, but the airlines have a problem, because if they want to use another instrument, they're not using their gas turbine, their turbine, they have to go long certification rounds. So it takes 12 years, 15 years, what they have to do. And here, this is the kerosene at the end is exactly to 100% chemically the same what they have now. So it can help us for the next 30 to 40 years to decarbonize that sector. This is why I think, yes, the e-fuels market for heavy load transportation or long distance transportation is one sector what I would say, yes, this is hard to abate. This is, yes, this is a sector.
That's a marvelous bridge to the second part of our event today, because after the break, we will inter alia concentrate on transport topics. That will be also interesting to hear. And I'm sure that you both, or especially my colleague Max, will also be available for you if you have any further detailed questions in this regard. One would be, from my point of view, for example, how do you fix a price for those agreements when the product is still in development and will be generated and sold in a couple of years' time? That's one question we get from many clients again and again. But I think you have your view on that. Happy to hear that later. For us, it's now time to have a break. Coffee, cold water. For those of you who are attending online, there's the option, as I mentioned in the beginning, to participate in an online questionnaire. Please feel free to participate. We will rejoin at 5 to 5, so 4:55. Thank you very much for your attendance so far, and see you soon again. Thank you. Welcome again to the second part of our Munich Hydrogen Summit. After this recreational break, we are now jumping on to the next interesting presentations, whereas the politicians seem still to work on strategies and details on a national and supranational level. We have actual projects and market participants who are working on scaling up the hydrogen business, hydrogen economy. The next speaker is Luc Carré, the head of Central Europe at Elhive, who is currently managing the international business of Elhive. Elhive is a producer of green hydrogen with its headquarters located in Nantes in France. Elhive develops, designs, constructs, finances, and operates green hydrogen production plants in Europe. As regards Luc, prior to his recent position, Luc Carré has gained over 10 years of experience in working with renewable energy. Today, Luc Carré will show the roadmap to scale up green hydrogen production. Luc, I hand over the word to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a big pleasure to be here in front of a live audience in Munich, but of course also for those which are remote or watching on the PC or the iPad, etc. First of all, the company is called Live. Sorry, I forgot to tell this to you before, but it's called Live. The HY is of course coming from hydrogen, which was before the word life, that's the Deutsche word Leben, but the I was replaced by HY. We are a producer of green hydrogen, which means we invest in production facilities to produce green hydrogen. We operate them and we sell them to off-takers. As of course, the market of hydrogen, we cannot, let us say, buy ready-to-build projects like we know them from wind and solar on the market. The majority of the projects we have in our pipeline, we need to develop by ourselves. As such, we have today a pipeline of about 9.6 gigawatt of projects in Europe, which we have in development. The company was founded in 2017 in France, in Nantes. Nantes is the west of France. And we had then in 2017, we started with 5 people. A little bit later, I came on board. We were at that time with 14 people. And a little bit later, it went all very fast. We had then also a number of investors which came on board. One was Mitsui, which came on board, EDP Renewables, but also Swen Capital, and also Banque Territoire from France came also. And then it was last year, May, and we made already our IPO on the French stock exchange market, the Euronext in Paris. And this all in this short time. And in the meantime, we are with 200 people. So a little bit more than 200 people. We celebrated on Monday because we had on Monday 6 new people starting in the company. So we are above the 200 now. And I would say about 50, 60 of them are engineers, process engineers, electrical, civil engineers, etc. People which can help us to make a basic design. And that helps us a lot when we start developing a project to make a first judgment, a feasibility on this project, because we can make in-house a first basic design. And of course, also those people can help us also on the immatureness, I would say, of the electrolyzer equipment, because that's unfortunately the reality today. So it is lots of immature technology, lots of technical issues to solve, or challenges. I would not call it problems because that's so negative. I would like to talk about challenges, but it also electrolyzers, also compressors, etc. Then, so that lucky we have those people that we can solve them in-house, because on guarantees or whatever from the manufacturers you cannot count on, because they are simply ignoring or not willing to give them because of no trust in their own equipment, I would say. So that is unfortunately the reality which we have today. So I will show you lots of pictures from real things. So I'm not going to show you letter of intents, MOUs, or drawings, etc., but what we might be doing in 2040 or whatever done. There will be 2 drawings in my presentation, which have no further meaning. It's not something that we are going to do, just a drawing to illustrate what I'm going to tell at that moment. The rest is real stuff. This is the real stuff. That was our first plant, which we inaugurated in France, which was in September 21. The funny thing is, September 21, almost 2 years ago, we are still the only one in France producing green hydrogen. 2 years later, thousands MOUs and letter of intents further from Total, Engie, EDF, etc. And still we are the only one. So that is unfortunately the reality. This is a small plant, smaller than 1 megawatt. That's also something which I will bring over. We start small, smaller than 1 megawatt. But interesting on this plant is we are directly connected to 3 wind turbines. Nobody in the world ever did this on this scale to connect wind turbines directly with the electrolyzer, not going via the grid. And the other thing is also we take the seawater to make the hydrogen out of these. So we do first some desalinization, complex word, and then it goes in the electrolyzer to make hydrogen out of these. And from this plant, we supply to customers by tube trailer, because there's no backbone in France. So we do by tube trailer, these kind of containers. When the newest generation, we can put a half a ton in 20 feet, and in a 40-feet container, 1 ton of hydrogen. And we have 3 customers there. One is Lidl, which has a warehouse depot in the area there, and they have a warehouse running on forklifts on hydrogen. So we supply them daily with the hydrogen. We supply also for the buses in the Vendée. They have 2 hydrogen buses. They're going to extend their fleet this year, and also a fueling station for hydrogen in the region also, about 20 kilometers further. Now, in the meantime, we became a group active all over Europe. So we have an office with 5 people in Spain. We have, of course, our big office in Nantes. We have our headquarters for Central and Eastern Europe here in Cologne. We have quite a big office also in the UK, in Stockholm. We are, let us say, spreading us activities all over Europe. And I think that helps us also, this kind of scale, to do things really on scale, to make them in one brick and try to repeat them, let us say, X times on all these potential projects which we are doing in Europe. Talking about Central and Eastern Europe, we have made a strategy which is consisting out of 3 parts. To start first, that we say by 2025, we are committed to deliver green hydrogen in every corner of this country. That will be with a network of plants, about 6 plants, which we are currently developing or starting the construction very soon, in a couple of weeks time. And those will be operational in the next 2 years to come. So by 2025, we'll be able to supply. We are already able to supply even today, just to make that remark, green hydrogen. And the next step is then that the hydrogen backbone is available around N26, 27. Then we will have big plants in the north connected to offshore wind parks and bring big amounts of hydrogen into the hydrogen backbone to supply big industrial off-takers. And the third step, I will show you also, is offshore production. As a company, at the capital market, we have committed that by 2030, we will have 3 gigawatt operational capacity. So that is not something which I say, but that is committed at the capital market, that is serious on. We have also committed by 26 that we will be EBITDA break-even, which means we make about 200 million euro revenue, and we need a capacity of about 200 megawatt. And we've also committed that by 24 we have 55 megawatt operational capacity. These are numbers which you can find at our investor relations pages from life. And we are building today. We are building today in Béziers in France, a 5 megawatt plant. This is what is happening today. Also happening today, we are building in Sweden. That's a 1.5 megawatt plant. By the way, we are technology agnostic, what electrolyzer concerns. And this one we are building even with a Chinese electrolyzer manufacturer. And it's a good test actually to see how far they are with the technology. And this will be the first project in Germany, which will be up and running by the end of this year. In December, We need to be operational because we need to start delivering as of January next year to the Deutsche Bahn in Tübingen for the hydrogen train from Siemens Mobility, which will be starting to run there. That will be 1 megawatt electrolyzer at the station of Tübingen. But then scaling up further down, so I said 1 megawatt, 5 megawatt, and this will be 10 megawatt in Schwäbisch Gmünd. So this, we are expecting the building permission in September, and that we start construction in October. And this will be operational next year, May, June. So the FID we had this year in March, and everything is, I would say, on the rails to achieve this. And then, this is just a drawing to say, we are further scaling up. We are thinking on bigger plants, the bigger plants, and this, forget this stupid drawing. This is more interesting. This is the real stuff. This is Delfzijl. This is the province of Groningen in the Netherlands, where we have a land plot beside Dow Chemicals over there. And there we are currently developing 200 megawatt of electrolyzer capacity. That should be operational beginning 27, when also the Gas Uni network is available there. And from there, we'll be even able to deliver through Germany then, to deliver the whole Ruhr area, and even further up, a big steel company, without mentioning names, a little bit first the east, a little bit the south of Hanover then, even up to there, it will be possible to deliver hydrogen there produced in the Groningen area. And in Germany, we're also developing in the north big hydrogen capacities. This is also real stuff. This is Lubmin, so Greifswald. Here is Nord Stream 1 and 2 coming on land, as you might know. And this is a land plot of 8.6 hectare, which we have acquired. And the substation is over there. So it is very nice TAC substation. And the water is here, and the sea is a little bit there. So we can take the seawater down, do desalination, and make hydrogen out of this. Here it's going to come 800 megawatt capacity. And that will also be connected to the backbone, which is going from Lubmin, all going down to Leipzig, and then making, after 2030, a curve, and going to Baden-Württemberg, up to Ludwigshafen BASF. So that is this pipe, which is called flow. Now talking about offshore wind. So why offshore wind hydrogen production on the sea? That's I'm going to explain now to you. So first of all, this is in Europe the demand of electricity. And this is the technical possibility of offshore wind capacity in European waters. We know that the German government, Robert Habeck, is announcing 60, 70 gigawatt extra capacity offshore wind. There is also in Netherlands a similar announcement, 60 gigawatt extra renewable capacity offshore wind. In Scotland also an extra 60 gigawatt. Ireland also the same. So we see these numbers everywhere popping up. Now the issue is, how can we bring this electricity to land? Take, for example, in Germany, we have 8 gigawatt capacity. We do not know how to bring the electrons down here to Bavaria. No idea. We are already years discussing about Nordlink and Southlink. And there we discuss about 2 to 3 gigawatt capacity. If we take now this pipe, which I just explained, going from Lubmin all the way down to Leipzig, which is a hydrogen backbone pipe. This pipe is today carrying natural gas. They will make this empty to make it possible to put hydrogen into this. This pipe can carry the equivalent of 20 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity. So now you understand that 10 years or more discussion about Southlink, Nordlink, 2 to 3 gigawatt, no result until today, and refurbished natural gas, make it available for hydrogen, in one shot, 20 gigawatt available to bring from the north to the south. So we will bring down electrons in the north, make molecules, and bring it as molecules down here to the south. That is the idea behind. And that is also the future for this whole 60 gigawatt, which will be added on, because that will not be possible with electricity only. Netherlands the same. The network is totally congested. Even people asking for a connection of a solar PV on their roof, they have to wait a year for this. So therefore, that is the solution. And that is the reason why we are heavily investing in this technology.
What you see here is a location called Semeref in the Atlantic Ocean in France, which is about 26 kilometers away from Le Croisic. Le Croisic is a very nice area to do a holiday, etc. It's a bit north of Saint-Nazaire. So you have Nantes and then Saint-Nazaire, and then a little bit more north is Le Croisic. This has been an area which was defined by the French government as a test field in the sea, in the Atlantic. And there has been this floating wind turbine, which was the first in France floating wind turbine, doing a test there. And this thing has been also years, 2 years it has been tested. And this was a barge to generate electricity by the waves. Not by, but the waves. So because we have waves there, potential waves from 15 and 20 meters and higher. So this test has been finished, and we took over this barge. And we brought this barge down to the port of Saint-Nazaire. We removed these solar panels here because we had this deck to be empty for our intention, because our intention is this one, which we realized. So we put it here, an electrolyzer container on of 1 megawatt. So here, plug power. So with this American electrolyzer manufacturer we did. You see here 2 containers, which are for the electricity part, for the direct connection to the wind turbine. Here's a control container, and here's a container for the desalinization done. That is the thing which I have realized in less than 12 months, from the first discussion with plug power until what you see here. We have been testing these done 3 months in the port of Saint-Nazaire, this thing, and this was really done with 3 parties in a consortium. We do not like big consortium. You cannot work on this one. So smaller consortium, very effective, all on the same wavelength and the same speed. That works perfect. So that's what we have realized. 3 months testing, and then we pulled this out of the port of Saint-Nazaire. And you see, this is the real stuff. This is a connector, a subsea connector, to connect the electrolyzer, the barge, with the wind turbine. That's a huge thing. That's just like we have here somewhere down, but that is really that huge thing which is on the bottom of the sea and connected to. So that is 2 of our engineers which are working here. And now this barge is over there. So we have produced last week, as a test, the first kilograms of hydrogen on a floating structure. Everybody said, you guys are totally crazy. This is suicide. But we have more than enough sensors in this. When it really goes wrong, to go the Elon Musk approach and say, at least we have all the data. But yeah, so this is really the first in the world being able to produce hydrogen on the sea. And we will have probably, by the end, really a huge amount of data and experience from these tests. We have done these tests. We have received 600,000 euro of subsidies. We were not willing to wait longer for more subsidies. That's another approach which you can do. Wait as long as you have 100% financed by the government then. For us was time of essence actually to do this as soon as possible. This is done, was 1 megawatt. This is the next, I finished immediately because you were getting nervous, I see. This is Ostende. This is the beach of Ostende. And here at this location here, beginning 26, we will put this structure there. And on this structure, we're going to put a 10 megawatt electrolyzer. And we're going to bring with the pipe the hydrogen to the land and fill the tube trailers. So we can then show the whole value chain from producing on the sea up to bringing to the customer. That project has been good subsidized. That has been supported with 20 million euro by the EU and 8 million euro by the Belgian government. And then for us, this is done. The next step somewhere, but this is also just a drawing actually done. The real stuff will be that we are making ourselves ready in a consortium to participate on the SEN1 tender, which is going to come beginning next year. So that shows, that demonstrates really our seriousness and our willingness to invest heavily then in this topic offshore hydrogen production. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luc. Any questions in the audience here? There's one question. Microphone as a service.
Thanks. Hi, Frederick from Scheid from Pacifico Energy Partners. Regarding the floating electrolyzing project, what is the most important learning you're hoping to get from the sensors? Is it about the movement, about anything that can happen to an electrolyzer on sea? Yeah, what is it that you're hoping for?
Yeah, so the main thing what we are looking for is what is the impact of the harsh environment on all the equipment which you have there, because that's an important learning. When later on we go with Sen 1, we talked there about 300 megawatt, and then you should have these learning at least done to know how to do. And the other topic is also regarding maintenance. We try to do as much as possible predictive maintenance with artificial intelligence, etc., and also further working on those algorithms, etc. And when we have to do the maintenance on these floating structures, also there we can learn how to do it. But anyhow, we will bring these at regular timings somewhere in the future back to the port of Saint-Nazaire, and we can do a full inspection on everything. It's not like this, that there has to be weeks people there on this floating thing there to do some check, etc. Yeah.
Thanks, good luck.
One quick question from the online audience. Do you think the supply of water will be a constraint for the onshore development of hydrogen producing electrolyzer technology?
What we see is, and that's the reason why the big hydrogen capacities were built in the north, and which are, of course, near to strategic substations where the offshore wind is coming on land, where the backbone is also, but where we have also the proximity to the sea. Because our first project we have done in France has brought us many learnings about decentralization and doing most effective, etc., and efficient also done. And therefore, I think that is the right way to do. Plants like a Schwäbisch Gmünd, where it's 10 megawatt, that is okay. That is not really that huge amount of water that we need. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Luc.
Thank you
for this very interesting view on how to scale up hydrogen.
Thank you.
And just handing over to the next speaker today, which is Mr. Al-Mansour. He's representing DST Defense Service Tracks. We are now coming to those companies who need hydrogen, who are asking themselves, where does the hydrogen comes from and how does it affect my production processes? Some initial remarks about DST Defense Service Tracks. It is the world technology leader for the design and manufacture of tracks and running gear components for military vehicles. Their production process is very energy intensive. The product is, latest since the war started in Ukraine, a system-relevant product. Mr. Al-Mansour joined DST in 2015, where he was heading the sales department. Since 2021, he is the CEO of the company, leading development, sales, and production. In his presentation, Mr. Al-Mansour will talk about the demand for hydrogen in production industry. Please join me in welcome Mr. Al-Mansour today online, and it seems to work. Welcome, Mr. Al-Mansour.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to have the chance to present DST and to present and talk a little bit about the challenges we are facing in this small or medium-sized industry where we DST are active in. First slide, please. Next slide, please. Just to have a brief information about DST and the importance of these small-sized industries or medium-sized industry in Germany. I know you're all located in Munich, or the ones who are in Munich don't like to hear that, but our company is located in Remscheid, and the area there is called Bergisches Land. And it's the area where the branding Made in Germany came from. It is very important to know that that area is filled with medium-sized companies, all very, very specialized in what they do. For example, tooling equipment, tracks, knives, so everything which has a lot of energy which you need to produce. Next slide, please. We are the world leader in the business of developing and producing tracks for military vehicles. And as all of you are aware, since last year, since the war in the Ukraine, this project became more and more important. And that's why we define ourselves as system relevant. So if we don't receive energy or we don't know where to get the energy in the future from, we cannot produce tracks, and this will in a later slide show up. This will bring us to a real problem facing the availability of tracked vehicles in Europe currently. Next slide, please. This is information about our product. You see the tracks of a military vehicle. You see that it is mainly a steel product with some rubber components. You see as well wheels, support wheels, idler wheels, and sprockets. Next slide, please. And to produce the steel, we have our own casting facility where we have a use of electricity of almost 15,000 megawatt per year. And the same quantity goes also for gas. We produce about 13,000 tons of steel in that production facility. Next slide, please. For the product itself, we also need rubber. So rubber is also very heat treated. There's a lot of energy intensive production steps. Next slide, please. And what I also mentioned to you is the worldwide need for these tracks as spare parts. And these are all partner nations. We are focusing mainly on Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Middle Europe, and NATO partners. Next slide, please. Let's get in a little bit more into the details of the production processes of our product. For the steel parts, we have croning sand forms where the liquided steel is casted into. To produce that, we have a lot of use of gas. Next slide, please. Here you can see electric arc furnaces. So we need a lot of electricity to melt the steel. The steel will then be melted to a temperature of 1,600 degrees. Next slide, please. The casting ladle must be heated, so there's also a lot of gas. So before we put in the liquided steel to cast it into the forms, we have a lot of gas usage too. Next slide, please. After casting the product, there are a lot of processes of hardening and tempering. So we need a lot of gas and oil. Next slide, please. And this brings us to a huge challenge, not only in having the right material for tempering, for casting. As we know, the strategy is towards hydrogen. Hydrogen has another process. Then we process the normal gas, which we are using now. So we are in contact with companies like Nippon to understand what we need to change, not only in investing in toolings and in machines, but also in thinking of how to handle the temperatures and the different processes which will change with hydrogen in comparison with the normal gas. Next slide, please. Of course, that hydrogen works different than the normal gas, means to invest about 5 million euros per year for the next 2 to 3 years to be ready to use hydrogen in our facility. Next slide, please. Here you have a picture of discussion during the area where we are located in. The blue line is the line where the hydrogen grid is planned. We are marked more in the north. Maybe you can see the red target over there. There is our facility. The green one is where the normal gas is currently supplied, or the grids are. So we are in political discussions also to be assured that we will receive our hydrogen in our facility. Next slide, please. What we have done in the city of Remscheid is together with other companies. This is just a short overview of some companies where we are now representing more than 15,000 employees in Remscheid, putting together the need of energy, electricity and gas and trying to use these informations to get a view of the politicians to know that the grid for hydrogen in our area is very, very important, and it needs to be a hub so that our area can still keep on in the international competition. Next slide, please. The challenges what we are facing is not only to get the material like the hydrogen and the grids. The challenges we are also facing are the energy prices. Just in words, for electricity, we were paying 5 cents in the last years, and because of the war in the Ukraine, our prices got up to 25 cents. Our product is very, very energy intensive. So about 30% of the product cost is energy. And the price increases which we have faced in the last 1.5 years were very immense for our company. So it is harming us in the international competition. And it also harms us because we have usually 2 to 3 years frame contracts. So we cannot increase the prices from one day to the other towards our customer. So this is a real challenge. We know that from other companies, the price was not from 5 to 25 cents, but from 5 to 50 cents. And this is something that we need to consider as German industry, where these prices are going to develop, and no one is answering towards us, at least currently, the answer where the hydrogen price will end up. Another thing is also automation. As our company is a company which has a lot of employees and hard work to do, we are more and more planning on automation. And it is very important to have the right energy networking, energy strategy to get forward with the automation. As we are not really knowing where the way will end, it is hard for us to increase our automation efforts. And the last point I wanted to highlight, this is something really paining us as casting facilities, is the issue of the CO2 footprint. As you know, casting was always meant to produce CO2. Of course, by using green hydrogen, we can reduce this footprint, but we will be not able to be at zero CO2 output within the next decade. I think I came to the end of my presentation. The challenges which were written down here are the challenges we are all facing in the medium-sized industry in Germany. And we are really looking forward to have more discussion with the politicians to understand where we are heading to and how we can keep competitive from Germany. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Mansour. Are there any questions in the audience to Mr. Al-Mansour? That's the moment where I'm missing my microphone. Perhaps it can be passed back to me. Thank you. I got one initial questions to you, Mr. Al-Mansour. That's perhaps a little bit a provocative opening question, also directed to the politicians responsible for not only the industry, but for all of us. Would DST need to leave, from your point of view, Germany as a production place if the energy question is not solved and the way clearly directed?
That's a very, very interesting question. As you know, as we are the supplier of the German military, there's also some rights concerning the technology which we have. But for those who have read or remember, that with bringing the NATO on board and building up a front line between the East and the West, at that time Germany was the border or was the front line. Now there is a clear trend towards the East. For example, the Polish MOD is asking us frequently if we are willing to open facilities in Poland. We will not be able to open it in China or Russia or any one of these markets, but there is a clear question to go more east. And I think this is not the answer we are really want to give towards our politicians. But this could be a discussion further on to go more east. For example, in Poland, where the front line now is.
Thank you. One spontaneous additional question from my side. You mentioned you will not be in a position to contribute to this net zero aim within the next 10 years. Do I understand that correctly, that you think it will take substantial time still before you can, and that's perhaps also a technical question, fully switch your production processes to green hydrogen? Or won't it ever be possible to have a 100% transition in this regard?
I think zero CO2 footprint for casting products is impossible. So we can lower it by using hydrogen, of course. This needs some investments, which we are already planning, we are working on. I showed you the slide with a company called Nippon, where we are very close on in investing the next years to bring on the CO2 footprint. But there needs also to be some ideas which are very fruitable. For example, casting is the best recycling process which we have in Europe for steels. So if we consider this, we should lower the CO2 footprint just by understanding that casting is also a recycling process. So the steel which is not used in the industry, which would be thrown away, is reused. And I think if the politicians understand this, we get very close to the zero CO2 footprint.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions to Mr. Al-Mansour? I think that's not the case, and I just quickly check our online participants. I'm happy that our technical experts solved another problem of the energy transition, which is energy storage, obviously, now linked to fully renewable energy. That is not the case. Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Mansour, for bringing us, for showing us the challenges of actually producing industry in Germany. And we can support you in your speech that the decisions have to be made quickly. That's what we heard today earlier as well. And again, once again, thank you to you. And I hope you join us in the discussion later in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings me to the next agenda point. We are switching a little bit and we'll start now with a panel discussion, and we'll open this with the extension of our group of experts, which we have in presence here and also had presentations already heard about so far. And the first of these additional experts I want to welcome to you, and which I want to kindly ask to join me here in front of the in presence audience, is Udo Schneider from Green Giraffe Advisory. Udo Schneider is Managing Director at Green Giraffe Advisory. Green Giraffe Advisory is the pioneering arm of the Green Giraffe Group, dedicated to pushing the next frontier in finance. Green Giraffe Advisory is an independent financial advisor focused on helping clients shaping the energy transition. Their reputation was built over the last decade on entrepreneurial and innovative finance solutions for capital-intensive energy transition projects. I'm curious to hear what Green Giraffe is currently advising on. I heard it is about large-scale projects worldwide. Udo, I hand over the word to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks for having me. Great pleasure. I could not have explained us better, but maybe Green Giraffe is a bit of a new name, maybe for some of you. We've been around in the industry for a while. We've been pioneering financings for energy transition projects. We normally come in when it's a bit more complex, and actually we have a lot in common with life. Actually, we discovered it's not just the color of the business card. which also matches, by the way, the Watson Farley logo color. So I see a theme here. But we also been pioneering financings in complex projects. So we started off in offshore wind in particular, but branched out into other technologies. We do truck charging, we do all sorts of stuff. And today, I'm showcasing a project, and maybe I start with a little quiz. Anyone wants to pronounce the name of the project? The project is called Nujio'qonik. Let me help you. It's a project in Canada, but maybe just go to the next slide, and I can probably do that with this one, right? Amazing, amazing technologies. Which one is it? In the middle, perfect. So just quickly summarizing who we are, what we do. So as Christian introduced us, we are pioneering financings for complex stuff. We've got probably about 130 people spread across 10 offices globally. So from Sydney, from Tokyo, from Boston, Cape Town, but the core is of the people, of the 130 people, is based in Europe, spread across Europe. I'm personally based in Hamburg. And we really like to support clients that want to make a difference and work on large scale stuff. That's what we do. We raise financing. So we are a financial advisor, and we help shape business cases. So if you think about it, hydrogen, we already heard, it's a complex topic. It's not new for us per se. We've been supporting projects on a global scale for probably the last 5 years, maybe a bit longer. And as you said before, it's not just about MOUs. It's not about just great pictures. We've actually raised financings already large scale for developers, for technology, for new creative ideas. And I think in the public domain, there's a lot of discussion on which is the region that will basically dominate the production of green energy, and not just green electricity, but the product that can be used in different places that are not grid connected per se. So ship across oceans, like that's the new vision. And we've been looking into this, in various places. We've done projects in Australia. We are working currently on a project in Chile. These are all large scale endeavors. And today, as I already mentioned, I'm going to talk about for a few minutes about the Nujio'qonik project, which is quite unique in its own right. It's in Newfoundland. Let me just give you a few facts. It's basically to be the first Canadian project to ship large-scale green energy across oceans. It's got a large-scale capacity. It's going to be in stages, but designed for up to 3 gigawatt of onshore wind production. We also the client thought about offshore wind, but then realized there's huge area available, which is good, and it's elevated. So why go the extra mile and do complex stuff like like fixed bottom offshore wind if you can do onshore, large scale? There's port infrastructure, there's logistics, there's sites available, and there's a lot of political support also in Canada, because it's, people realize it is one of the few places on the planet where you've got a lot more capacity, like renewable energy available that you can consume in the local market. So why not tap into this vast resource and make use of it? That's been the idea. The key highlights of this project is not just its size. Obviously, it's very ambitious as such. But the beauty of it is, and this is how it started, it's got a water dam, hydro dam, very close by. There's a grid connection available that can at least be utilized. So there's storage capacity. There is abundance of fresh quality, high quality water, right available, no desalination. There is a deep water port. The project just acquired a pretty significant port, because obviously port infrastructure is one of the key elements. There are many projects in the regions that are trying to do something similar, but it's the little details like, do you have a port? Do you have port access? Can you actually get equipment to the site to develop it and build it? But do you also, do you have the capability to ship the product eventually across oceans, which is a big topic. It's a big endeavor, like something you said, challenge. Like, I wouldn't say problem either, but it's something that's not been done before at this scale. So a couple of things when you look at the paper on paper, like comparative advantage of this site compared to other places. This is one of the few spots where you can, with renewable, get as close as possible to base load, which is what you need if you want to run an electrolyzer. It's not just the capacity as such, it's not just the LCOE that you can achieve as a key ingredient for competitive hydrogen or hydrogen derivatives. It's also the utilization rate that you need to optimize. So these are the reasons why this is one of the projects that's currently receiving quite a bit of attention. And it's going to be built, just to visualize that a little bit and give you a few more facts about the project, in stages. As I said, the first stage is already substantial by today's standard. It's 1 gigawatt of onshore wind, and an electrolyzer capacity that is already significant with 600 megawatts. This, you know, I think you said that, someone said that before, the optimization of these ingredients. We're technically speaking about a chemical plant that happens to have intermittent power supply. That's a key thing to understand. And when we talk to this needs to be financed, right? So we speak to banks, to lenders, to support organizations. They come from a mindset of this is renewables. So you sell electrons, there's a market for it. Let's talk about the market in a sec. But it starts already with the complexity of it's a chemical plant. There's a lot of interplay to optimize these numbers. So it's not just happened to be on a slide. There's 2 years of analysis behind this. It may be shaped a bit further, but directionally, this is what the plant is going to look like and how it's going to be designed. So quite a significant endeavor. To put things a little bit into perspective, and I've had a few discussions here earlier on the support regime. So this project started a few years ago. H2 Global was just sort of coming up as an idea. It's a brilliant idea, I think. And you know, the directives that we heard about today that have also been discussed for a while were just coming through. So the good news is this qualifies in accordance with the directives. That's good. If you talk about support schemes, behind this project are investors that are happy to put money to this, and this is a significant investment. They just signed up with a new partner from Korea, SK. It's a big industrial party that came in, that signed for some 20% of the development capital that's needed. Ultimately, the project is in the range of far above 4 billion investment for the first phases. So it's huge. If you then think of H2 Global, the first tender, that was basically, if the project had applied for it in the first round, that would have been 1 year of production. That's not what you need in order to take an investment decision of this scale eventually. So it gives you a dimension of financial support, of long-term offtake contracts you need. And we just heard sort of the medium and small scale companies. How do you marry these kind of projects where people come also from the renewables space, where you are used to either a market, an electricity market where you can sell merchant even today, you can build a project based on merchant prices, or on long-term offtakes, 10 years, 15 years, maybe 5, whatever you like. You can optimize your financing. This needs a long-term offtake. It doesn't exist. There are a lot of discussions. Obviously, this project is receiving support, is receiving quite some attraction, but there are also many, many other projects. So how do you explain to your key off-takers that may not be the end client that it's this project and not one of the 50 others that, you know, pop up everywhere around the planet, that this is actually for real? It comes back to the key ingredients. So fresh water, access to port, all these kind of things. That's important. But it's a very important connection that needs still to be made for a final investment decision, because it's just significant in scale and a lot of challenges, a lot of first of its kind problems that are yet to be encountered. It helps if such a project receives attention. So this is Prime Minister Trudeau and Mr. Scholz last year at the project site. It's about 11 months ago. And it's that they are signing and supporting agreements to facilitate, which is good. So this is on the agenda. But as I said, like it's not a done deal yet, and it needs financial support. The good news is, if you think about financing this, it will take These kind of projects, if it's not an oil and gas major, one example, if these are smaller developers, you need debt financing. There are so many challenges on debt financing and so many things. Like it starts, someone said it before, there's the technology topic. I will probably not have an EPC rep, someone guaranteeing me that this will provide a certain production at a certain capacity level, at a certain quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Partly because you've got so many components. So by nature, this will be complex contracting. That's good for Watson Farley. But there's so much to be done. The good news is the export credit agencies, in particular Euler Hermes, IFO of Denmark, are gearing up and are really and have a mandate to support this. And it's also the beauty, right? It's German engineering, Danish and European engineering that can be supported by these agencies in funding, in risk sharing, in risk taking, to be deployed, in other places of the planet. In this particular case would be Newfoundland, to bring back green energy. It's a good idea. So they will have a very vital role, and they talk about big numbers, but they also have the challenge, which of my many applications is going to make it in the end? So that's a very, very interesting point. I think there's plenty to discuss on these topics, but I probably finish here by way of introducing the topic.
Thank you very much, Udo. Indeed, I suggest that we introduce our next speaker before I then raise some questions also from the online audience to you and the other speakers. So please stay with me. Yeah, take my seat if you want, if you like to. I want now to introduce another expert, also from the financing industry, Mr. Marcel Werner, to you. Marcel Werner is one of the founding partners of Senco Hydrogen Capital and has extensive experience as an award-winning cleantech entrepreneur and financial analyst. Senco is providing institutional investors with a one-stop access to the fast-growing hydrogen economy. They invest in companies and projects along the hydrogen value chain, generating sustainable and ESG-compliant returns of the asset class. So please join me in welcome Marcel Werner, who will now give us a brief insight in what they are active already and what they are looking at. Marcel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Christian. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. It's a pleasure. I think I keep it with Till Mansmann. He said it before. If you think of hydrogen today, it's a very capital-intensive undertaking, and most people acting in that environment are talking about subsidies from the government or about innovation pockets from large conglomerates or corporations. Until Mansmann said it, private investors should come into that play and invest heavily into as well projects and companies, because it takes both sides to make that ramp up happen. Senco Hydrogen Capital is a private equity firm focusing on exactly that. By purpose, experienced people came together to initiate a new private equity player only focusing on hydrogen and nothing else. And by hydrogen, of course, we mean everything which is connected to it, so all derivatives such as ammonia and stuff. And we are not focusing on the energy itself as a molecule. We are looking into all sectors connected to that, so industry, mobility, and of course the energy world as well. So what is needed to invest money into that complex area? We heard it just before. It is difficult to find a solution contractual-wise. It is not easy to understand the chemical processes. It's not easy to jump between the sectors, which are all integrated by the element hydrogen. And so we ideally set up the team coming from all kinds of backgrounds. So of course, financial backgrounds, private equity / investment in general, but also hydrogen from a research point, hydrogen from a more point of development and application, and also from the let's say complementary fields from mobility, industry, and again, energy. Because you need all those competences in-house to be a sector-specific investment firm, independent, and a service partner for investors. So which money is invested? That's very important to understand. We are not investing the money from I say the average guy on the street, but for larger institutions. Our money is coming from governments, public funds, so to say, but the large and vast majority is coming from insurance companies, pension plans, and institutional investors as such. And on behalf of them, we are managing their assets and allocate that money to the hydrogen ecosystem. And our history as Senco goes back like 3 years. We incorporated then. But of course, all the key persons driving that company are involved in that sector for a longer time. Me personally, I'm involved into the industry and energy sector since, let's say, 2010. And we looked at the value chain and said, okay, where can investors earn money as of today? So we heard a lot of projects, large infrastructure projects from Canada, one example before, or smaller ones in France, or there are all kinds of projects related to producing the element hydrogen and transfer it and use that kind of green energy or ammonia or any other derivative. But for institutional investors, it's important to earn the money not in 10 years or even later. That's apart for strategic investors like oil and gas companies who want to be part of the transition to have a new kind of portfolio, green portfolio, and the purpose for existence in the future of clean energy. For the investors, it is important to have return results quicker than that, at least for the institutional investors who engage in our fund. And so we analyzed the whole value chain and said, okay, where are the particular spots where you can have returns quicker than waiting for the regulatory framework from governments or let's say the project development itself. And we came to the conclusion that it is even today an order overload, sorry for the word, for hydrogen enabling companies. So companies producing technology, delivering systems, subsystems, components, parts, and pieces to the large electrolyzer companies. Those companies have orders today, and more orders, or the demand is higher than they can supply. And they need capital partners, which not only supply the capital to open up another production facility for producing pressure tanks, which they deliver to electrolyzer companies, but it takes knowledge to grow in the fast direction to supply the large conglomerates behind electrolyzer companies. So I stay with an example. It's not a specific target area. We are focusing on everything which is connected to the hydrogen ecosystem. But electrolyzer is very simple to imagine. Siemens Energy is a very popular company. Of course, there are others like ThyssenKrupp and so on. However, Siemens Energy, I stay with that example in particular, has the ability to go to the capital markets to refinance themselves, to open up another plant. They can issue a bond, whatever. They have access to capital. They announce, let's say, a gigafactory, and they probably will reach that goal very quickly if they really put the money to work. However, the suppliers below, they have not the ability to go to the capital markets and say, hey, I want to issue a bond. Can you help me? They have to go to the local states bank or where else. Or they can take the family saving and put it at risk, all relying on that hydrogen will ramp up that quickly and that Siemens Energy will take off the products and parts and pieces. So what it takes is an equity investor who understands the market and who helps this particular company to grow in the same speed like Siemens Energy. And this, just to give you an example, most of those OEMs, so to say, have a value creation of 20% of the end product, and 80%, a rule of thumb, is sourced by little or a small, medium-sized suppliers, and all of them need capital. And this is a huge market, and if those companies are acting quickly, they can be the preferred supplier for those large conglomerates. And by doing so, they have a long-term growth story as in a pole position to profit from the hydrogen ramp-up. And we are exactly in the position to help those companies and to realize and capture the profits for evolving from making the infrastructure of hydrogen happen. This is our key focus at the current point in time. And we all agree hydrogen is more than that. Of course, the large volume of capital needed is on the infrastructure side. And that's why we have a second pillar, so to say, where we also look at small and decentralized hydrogen projects. Because it takes both sides, and both sides need capital to lift up the hydrogen ecosystem. And I hope this is a small overview of what we do and where we can be a partner. And many faces here in the room, some of them I know, some of them I might say hello to after that conversation, can be a partner on the one hand side, on company-wise or project-wise. And we would like to help to establish a new CO2 neutral economy based on hydrogen, and this is our mission basically. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Marcel. That's interesting. I already prepared also some questions for you. And once again, my question also to our valuable online audience, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the live stream to send us some questions. We will now introduce one further expert and then start a more interactive question answering, also including former speakers of today. The next expert I want to welcome in our round is Tim Jolibois from Enapter. Tim is a strategy manager at Enapter, where he's responsible for scaling up the business as they expand their product portfolio. Tim has over 5 years of experience in strategy consulting and holds a Master of Science in Environmental Change and Management from the University of Oxford. Enapter is an innovative energy technology company that manufactures highly efficient hydrogen generators, known as electrolysers, to replace fossil fuels and thus drive the global energy transition. The patented and proven anion exchange membrane technology, AAM technology, enables the mass production of cost-effective plug-and-play electrolysers for green hydrogen production at any scale and any place. Their modular systems are already used worldwide in the energy, mobility, industrial, heating, and telecommunication sectors. This sounds like a very good solution for many problems we heard about today. So please join me in welcome Tim, who will now tell us some more details about Enapter and their solutions to provide. And again, after this, we will start an interactive dialogue. So please collect also your questions you have to the various experts. Tim, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, or good evening by now. I think my contribution will be a bit shorter than my predecessors, but I want to start by giving a brief little introduction to Enapter, my employer. We work in 2 countries at the moment manufacturing electrolysers. So we are originally an Italian firm with over 10 years of research experience. And I don't know how far you dove into electrolyzer technologies, but you might know the most famous one, which is alkaline and PEM. So as it was said in the introduction, we focused on anion exchange membrane electrolyzer, so called AEM. And you can describe AEM a bit like the best of both worlds. So alkaline is a tried and proven system over 100 years in the industry. It has a very low cost base. It's a very good solution for industrial applications, but over time, it was realized when the share of renewable increased that alkaline systems were rather unflexible, I should say, to integrate intermittent renewables. This is how innovators came up with PEM, the proton exchange membrane, which are more compact systems. They have very, very fast ramp up and down times, and they can integrate really easily dynamic loads of renewable energy systems. That's what they were conceived for. AEM basically takes the best of both worlds. So we have a stack that is highly flexible and dynamic. They can integrate varying renewable loads and really manages their intermittency well, but it has a much lower cost base than PEM. And that's really important to remember. When you read about the ramp up and the scale up of PEM or PEM electrolyzer companies in the news these days, a lot of it is related to the abundance or the availability of precious metals, platinum, titanium. Also, iridium is a hotly debated topic. And also the usage of PFAS. So you might have heard that the European Union is regulating or about to regulate or planning to regulate PFAS in electrolyzer technologies and industry. So AEM is a technology that is not reliant on any of these materials. We have a patented dry cathode, which means that our electrolyzers are not in a corrosive environment, so we can manufacture them with steel and nickel. And that gives us a very strong cost advantage over competing technologies. So that's a bit of the background to our technology. And what also is very special about the company that I work for is what I want to talk about now, which is our modular approach. So the diagram here might seem a bit technical, but it's actually very easy. So what Enapter is known for is our standardized AEM stack. That's a rather small stack at the moment. Our stack model is a 2.4 kilowatt stack, so it produces roughly 1 kilogram of hydrogen per day. But what we do with these stacks is we have created a product portfolio that allows us to really cover the range from very small home applications to megawatt applications by creating systems that are very, very flexible and can be constructed to cover any hydrogen need in the megawatt range, from the kilowatt to the megawatt range. And how does that work? We've developed this stack, which is our minimum modular unit. And we use this stack either, as you can see on the top, for our AEM electrolyzer. It's called a microwave. It's roughly the size of a microwave. As you can see, it's called EL 4.0. So it's our fourth dimension of the product. We've been continuously optimizing it over the years. And we have over 3,000 electrolyzers delivered and operating in the field. So we always say that we are one of the few electrolyzer companies that's not only planning, but we're also doing. We've been delivering these electrolyzers since 2017. And we also collect data to continuously improve our user experience. But the actual modularity of our system consists in the part of the product portfolio that you can see at the lower part of the slide, so our multi-core stack module. That means you use multiple cores, multiple stacks, to create solutions that have a shared balance of plant. So you can create so-called frame 50s or the AEM multi-core, which is a containerized solution, which produces 450 kilograms of hydrogen per day and has a capacity of roughly 1 megawatt. And then you can go ahead and combine these to even bigger systems. So our idea is that we create really resilient systems that are perfectly tailored to any renewable assets. So in this multi-core, you have these stacks that you can see here. In strings of 10 stacks, there's over 400 stacks in this container. And every string can be operated individually. So that means if you have varying loads from maybe solar or wind assets, then depending on the load, the system will always be optimized to run, to manufacture as much hydrogen as it can, depending on the sun or the wind conditions that you might face. And it also means that if anything should go wrong or there would be any difficulty, the system is still up and running. If you need a stack replacement, it's very plug and play. You take it out, you put it back in. It's maybe an hour. You can have spare stacks with your system or with our service staff, and the system will still run. So that's what differentiates us from the competition. We have a product platform strategy. So that also means, most of you will know it from the automotive industry, that we can commoditize to a certain extent our product, our stacks. So that allows us to reach economies of scale, which together with the inherent technology advantages of the AEM stacks really make us the cheapest technology in the market when it comes to electrolyzers. Yeah, that's it for now, and I'm looking forward to the panel. And sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but we have our Hauptversammlung General Assembly tomorrow, and I have to travel for that, so it didn't work.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm just looking at our experts. Do we have another guest already available? Or then we will start the panel discussion now, and I would like to have all speakers of today, as well as Mr. Engelmann, who will now support me and co-moderate the panel discussion with me in front of us. So please, if you just want to join us here and have a nice view into the cameras. So it will be a cozy round here. And we also try, I think, to involve our colleagues online. So yeah, perfect. Tim is already there, and perhaps some more participants. Yeah, I promised now it becomes a little bit more interactive. And yeah, let's start with some questions to these experts. And I would suggest that we then also discuss them and have the different views, because I think what makes our event very special is that we are covering almost every item of value chain or interest in investments on different levels of value chain. We have financing expertise. We have some experts about electrolyzer technology here. So that could be a very fruitful group. And please feel free again to ask us questions, challenge us, because that's what we want to show, is that hydrogen works and how it should work. I hand over to you, Mr. Engelmann.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can raise the first questions.
Yeah.
To
I would say, for sure, coming from the finance side, I'm always interested, Marcel, if you say the private equity side is definitely looking for that market. I absolutely agree. The part is going into the instruments what private equity can use is, I do think that the money will come back for your clients within 4 to 5, latest 6 years. The projects we see sometimes have sometimes a delay of 2 years. So the projects is potentially difficult to get the money so early back. So because then you have to make a so-called fire sale, which is normally in the documents of private equity companies not seen as attractive. The companies that you're saying is, let's say, heavily related to the market. That means the companies. What I have seen the last 3 years, everything was delayed. That means if your fund would have, for example, invested in supporters of hydrogen-related, for example, electrolysers, you will see that the ramp up, what they thought it should come, did not come at least the last 3 years. The first question is, have you raised the money already? So can you invest tomorrow in a project or in a company? Had the fundraising started, finished already? Where do you start here?
Good questions. I totally agree what you said. If you invest into a project right now, the return is not coming within the next 2 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we've allocate the vast majority of the fund to the company side.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that companies don't have a single pillar on hydrogen, but they have
Mm-hmm.
like multiple areas where they engage,
Mm-hmm.
but a very promising growth story based on hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to say is the risk is not only that the hydrogen ramp up will happen, it is an upside potential for those companies in the vast majority of the cases. And regarding your question with the fundraising, of course, we set up the company 3 years ago, and in simple words, in the first year we put together the team. In the second year we took an investor which backed our company and gave us the ability to set up the company in legal terms, who is also the first investor in the fund. And since the beginning of this year or end of Q1, we are actually in the fundraising ourselves. So, clear no, the fund is not raised yet, and the aim is a 500 million fund. And I think we are on good track, even though we are a slightly delay to our own calculations based or due to the market situation we all face.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question.
But one question perhaps then to Udo Schneider. When we talk about large-scale projects for so-called centralized generation, what do you think? Who will make the race? Which area in the world? Will it be Southern Europe, Northern Europe, Middle East, Africa, Canada, US, South America, Australia? So you notice the question is by purpose a little bit difficult because you have the free choice, but we are interested in your opinion, and perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on why do you think that or that region and that or this activity will take the lead, and which perhaps will follow them?
I would probably say, well, first of all, it's Canada. That's easy because it's a project we're working on. No, but I would be a bit technical and say it depends on, do you have the resource? That's bottom line. Do you have the resource that is not just like highly energetic, but it's constant as much as possible. So the more you can move to, and I said that before, to base load availability and base load production, the closer you get, the lower your LCOE can be. And that is the key ingredient. And then you need to have that very steady. So there are locations that we're looking at, Chile at the moment, where you'd say that this is unbelievable. Like it's unidirectional high-speed wind. You need to then be able to convert. Ideally, you have a grid access, you can balance, you have a setup that is so optimized. And that's the second ingredient. You need to have a high utilization of your entire plant. And, LCOE is key. And I think the other part that is essential and people tend to forget, and maybe we get to that in a second as well, but I'd like to point out cost of capital is a very key ingredient. So you need to be able to raise low-cost capital in a place where that's easily possible. I mentioned the ECAs to play a role, to take risk, but that's not everything, right? So it's a combination of these factors. Capital cost is so important to LCOE itself being a key ingredient into low LCOH. That makes it competitive. So there's a lot of structuring to be done also on the financing side. Happy to help.
Maybe one point to I think. Sorry, maybe one point to that answer. The projects we have seen, there's one very important component to that, which you also mentioned, and I'm very glad that you did, which is space. You actually need space, and that's nothing to do with wind farm needs space and electrolyzer needs space. Hydrogen is a highly explosive, very reactive gas, which you're producing at large quantities. So I've seen lots of projects which at first sight look very, very promising. And then you see the surroundings, it's households. They say you will never, ever in your life receive a permit for a large-scale hydrogen electrolyzer in that area. It's just not going to happen unless you have security or security techniques available which are off market today, or which raise the cost of capital to points. So when you look at availability of water, of electricity, that's all fine and good, but actually space is a very important point as well.
Luke, do you want?
This indeed, that's also the learning where we went through. Where in the beginning we thought to go for in German called Gewerbegebiet, where you can build all kind of industry, etc. Even an Aldi supermarket you can build there in this area. But indeed, the major thing is actually noise, because even a 10 megawatt electrolyzer can make this kind of noise if you are coming close.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Regi. Thank you. So yeah, so it is noise, etc. And then that's also where then at the end of the day projects collapse or get delayed, etc. So we learn from this, and we're looking now to spaces in industrial area, which is of course more difficult to get. And yeah.
I got one question, perhaps to my colleague. Oh, yeah, please,
Yes.
Tim, please add your opinion on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a case for smaller decentralized applications, which is what we're doing, because we have just inaugurated our first containerized solution in Münster, Western Germany, by Münster, I should say, Western Germany. And it's very quiet. It is in the middle of a research center, and we truly believe that in order to accelerate the green hydrogen revolution, let's say, of course, we need large applications. We are not against, we know that it's necessary for industry, as we've discussed throughout the day, but it should be a two-pronged approach, because with smaller applications, a lot of progress can be made very quickly. We have a lot of clients from industry innovators that demonstrate pilot and demonstration projects with our electrolyzers. And we are actively also pushing for easier permitting when electrolyzers are below a certain size of megawatts. And that would be a very easy approach to making sure that we can couple them directly to renewable assets, that space is a bit less of a constraint, that security concerns are a bit less of a constraint, because if you only have 1, 2, 3 megawatts of electrolysis, the risks become a lot lower. And that could also be one way to look at that.
Perhaps then immediately one follow-up question to you before I pass on to David Diaz in Madrid. Tim, do you think with your decentralized, containerized, modular solutions, can you help the industry, which has today told us, the energy-intense industry, that they have quite an immediate demand to switch their generation or production processes, better to say, to green hydrogen? Can your technology help even those who are consuming a little bit more energy than perhaps all of us individuals here?
I think it really depends on the timeline. We believe that at the moment, the big double-digit, triple-digit megawatt projects, for us, they are more in the second part of this decade. But what we see in our client base now is that we are approached by even big industrial players that need hydrogen now, because they want to understand how they can scale and how they can use it. So I've, as in my time as a consultant, worked with a steel manufacturer, so I'm very familiar with the sizes of these installations. But I also know that there are other industrial players, and we work with ammonia, we work with sustainable aviation fuels that need smaller devices now in order to trial and get permits for their plants. And then as they scale up, they can do that with us as we create bigger systems. So we have the containerized 1 megawatt solution now, but we will be able to scale these into systems that are also able to cover the bigger industrial clients. But what is really important to emphasize is that if you order an electrolyzer now, if you order one of the smaller ones, it's a lead time of around 3 months. We can basically ship them in a month or 2. And if you order one of the megawatt systems, it's a year, roughly 12 months. So that also increases as I mentioned before, the speed at which you can innovate to trial and then ramp up to bigger installations. So yes, short answer is I think we can help with that.
Yeah, one question, it fits perfectly to what you said here, and I want to ask from Green Giraffe, the bigger projects, they have definitely the problem of the long lead items. So what's first? So normally we run to financial close and then we order the long lead items, but we potentially never come to financial close because the long lead items are always very long in the delivery of that space. So I'll give you an example. If you want to order 265 megawatts on electrolyzer for one project, the one supplier is saying for a 22 months delivery time. The second one is already 44 months. So you have no chance actually because it's a different project then. So is this already a problem from your side for Green Giraffe?
Well, it's a problem, it's a challenge, and it's an opportunity. So we also help raise financing for supply chain. That's
Okay.
let's say good for us. For the project, it's a challenge, but this particular one is in procurement. They are sort of making their way into this. But as always, there's so many chicken and eggs in this whole exercise. Offtake versus finance versus equipment versus everyone wants a guarantee that this is definitely happening. But yes, the answer is it's a problem. We're working on it. The project is in close discussions and is sticking to timelines and has got the support it needs. There's a reason why maybe SK, like a partner like this, comes in. They look on global procurement. German procurement is one option. It's a key option if you want to use the financing with export ECAs. Like then that's maybe obvious. Every option is currently being explored.
Maybe to answer this, what we do in practice is we are forced to do, we order already the grid connection before FID. So we need to take a pre-FID, and now we need to commit already to 1 to 3 million euro for the grid connection, and then later we take the FID. There's no other way to do it.
Can I add something to that? That's a very good point. That's really something we see across the industry, particular these large-scale projects where you go into development expenditure commitments way earlier. Your cost at risk is significantly higher. So if you really want to proceed because you need to secure the production slots, that is something that is currently on the table on some of these large scale
and even 10 megawatt, you order already the grid connection, also spend already 1.52 million euro before FID, just in the grid connection.
This is why I'm asking, because at the moment the scenery, if you have smaller scale projects, 1, 2, 3 megawatts, you can scale up. And let's say the development expenditure is definitely not so big. But the big projects, it's one FID. Potentially you never come to FID because you always miss one of the chickens, then the eggs is there, then the chicken is not. So you always run behind, and after 5 years you say, I have thousands of LOIs, but no project, because always some piece is missing. And this is where we also not come then to debt financing parts.
I do something which is very difficult for a moderator. I need to interrupt a little bit the discussion just to welcome a surprise guest, another speaker in our round. Please, Mr. Raphael Schmidt, if you would like to join us here in front of our discussion group, because you are completing the picture. Mr. Raphael Schmidt is Head of Business Development at Hydrogenius. Hydrogenius is a scale-up founded and located in Erlangen by Daniel Teichmann in 2013. The company addresses, with its unique LOHC, liquid organic hydrogen carrier technology, the missing link of transportation of hydrogen. Today, Raphael will also show us and give us some insight in the current activities and infrastructure for hydrogen transport. I think it's important to also have a quick look on what you are currently doing. Please, Raphael, join us directly here in the middle of us, and we will show our presentation, which does not mean that we leave our valuable guests from Madrid, and also Tim, you will be included soon after this short presentation by Raphael. So please.
Thank you very much. And I'm very sorry that I'm late. Actually, I was scheduled for 5:35, and I was this morning in Amsterdam. Yesterday we had an inauguration of a large association in Amsterdam with the Port of Amsterdam and all the Tata Steel, all the industry around, which we initiated. And this morning Amsterdam was very bad in terms of weather, so all the flights got delayed, and that messed up my schedule. So I'm very, very sorry for that, and thank you for the opportunity still.
Okay, the slides. Should we? Yeah, and should we put it on the monitor?
The audience online sees it already.
Ah, the audience online. Okay, perfect. Then the audience here is just imagining it. Now we got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, able to handle everything. Okay, but let me go very, very quick. I don't want to take too much of your time. The drinks are already there. So just a very quick wrap up in this very interesting round. So Hydrogenius is, you could say, a mid-sized company. We already passed startup. We are in Series C funding right now. We have quite some good investors behind us. Just a sneak preview. We have Chevron, Hyundai, Wopak, Mitsubishi, Temasek. Temasek is the Singapore state fund. So quite some good strategic investors, also good key partners, and very, very much also connected to the science world here around Munich, around Bavaria, with the University of Nuremberg and Erlangen. We have over 200, we are hitting 240 employees right now. By the end of the year, we're planning to have around 300 employees. So very strong growth this year, around 100 new employees. We have quite a strong patent protection, over 55 patent families filed. And I would say that's even an old number, most likely around 60. And the funding we raised is 80 million. And with the Series C, we are more than doubling that. And with some new names, of course, coming in. Let me skip that in terms of time and that too, but maybe that. So what we are doing is actually transport of hydrogen. So we are proposing an alternative towards ammonia. And ammonia, you might have heard that, is very much discussed about as a vector to transport hydrogen. And we believe that we have a better solution than ammonia. It is cost competitive, but it is safer. So basically what we have is an oil, and I get into that in a second. But what we believe in, what our vision is that all this great hydrogen production also here in Bavaria is very, very important, even in the north of Germany, but we will not have sufficient hydrogen to cover all of our needs to decarbonize completely the industry and also maybe the mobility sector and housing sector. So what we intend to do with our technology is to implement these large transport value chains along intercontinental value chains. So from the US to Europe, from Middle East to Europe, and we have activities along these value chains. So we have a big footprint in Middle East. We have an office in Abu Dhabi. We're developing strongly our activities in the US. We also have Asian roots in terms of our investors. So we're also having activities in Asia, from Middle East to Asia is also a transport route. And then from there on, and it's basically the missing link, our technology. But from there on, once we arrive, we see that with our technology, you can do centralized dehydrogenation, so centralized release of the hydrogen at the ports, but you can also go inland in terms of river shipping, which is also quite interesting for Bavaria. So you could reach Bavaria with our technology before the hydrogen backbone is here, if it ever will be, I don't know, but to be discussed. So integration with local industry, but also hydrogen refuel stations, as our technology is basically just an oil which you can transport in existing infrastructure. And having that said, very quick the technology and then wrap up, and then I give it over to you. So the technology is basically, like I said, an oil. So what we do is we have that carrier oil and we add hydrogen to it. It's a molecular connection. So it's a new molecule afterwards, it's still a liquid. And then we transport it and then we release it and then we have the same carrier liquid back. It's basically a circular process. We compare it to a big sponge, which you always put water in and then you put water out, or you can also say a liquid hydrogen battery, where hydrogen is being put in and is being put out, and you can charge and discharge it several hundred times. And the carrier liquid we're using is basically a heat transfer oil, benzyl toluene. And we misuse it for our purpose, and that works pretty fine. And it gives you all the advantages you have by transporting an oil. So existing infrastructure, existing ships, existing tanks. So you can leverage on all this very large diamond infrastructure around the world and very fast scale up these transport vectors. The only bottleneck, to be honest, is of course our technology, but we are already in ramping that up. As we have the first scale-up project, we've done around 12 pilots all around the world, and we have the first scale-up projects in North Rhine-Westphalia right now in permitting stage with the end piece in Rotterdam. Yeah, this is how it looks. And maybe to end with that, activities I can explain a little bit more if wanted later, also with the drinks. So basically it's superior safety. So you're handling an oil. It's enhanced flexibility. You can use the existing infrastructure. And it is also high efficiency as it has a very high storage density to the hydrogen. And it is cost competitive to all the other technologies, which is displayed not only by us, but also to various studies. So there are around 20 to 30 transport studies also looking at our technology and at ammonia and at liquid hydrogen and at pipelines. You can look them up. If you want, I can also give you some examples. But that's basically it. Cost competitive and safer and made in Bavaria.
Thank you very much, Raphael, for this missing link, because I think transportation is very, very crucial for the success and also for the supply to the customers who are looking for hydrogen. One question, I promised it now 3 times. Now I have to go to David Diaz in Madrid. About transport in Spain, is there any current activity regarding building up a pipeline grid or network in Spain? Or do you even think about establishing new ports and port infrastructure for transport, sea transport? That would be, of course, very interesting also for us as infrastructure lawyers interested in financing large-scale infra. David, do you have any update information on for us on that?
Yes, I will share you with the information that we have. As I previously mentioned, I mean, it is clear the goal of the Spanish authorities to support the development of an industry around green hydrogen projects. And following the approval of the Spanish roadmap for green hydrogen, which was approved 2 years ago, such commitment has been including figures in the National Climate Energy Plan. The first version of this plan, which, as you know, is mandatory for all the countries of the European Union, the goals for electrolysers by 2030 was 4 gigawatts. But this goal or target is currently under review, and in the proposal to amend the National Climate Energy Plan, this goal has been elevated up to 11 gigawatts. In order to consider this goal, on the one hand, Spain has taken into consideration the demand that the European Union has made to Spain to commit to increase their capacity to produce green hydrogen, not only for Spain, but also acting as a hub for other European countries. The Spanish government called for an expression of interest in order to identify, let's say, key projects, which I have to say that most of these projects, large scale, has been identified in areas close to potential off-takers that are indeed located in ports of the Iberian Peninsula. The intention of the government and also the TSO is once this expression of interest and the project, this expression of interest has been received, Spain is working in the so-called hydrogen valleys, which will give a clear guideline to the TCO in order to develop the planning of a specific grid network for the transport of green hydrogen connected to Portugal, but also to the North Europe through the H2Med project that, you know, will connect, or the intention is to connect Portugal, Spain, France, Netherlands, and Germany. And this is, I mean, probably we will not see this in the short term, but just for let you know, this mandate to create or to work in a dedicated network for the transport of green hydrogen, which, as I mentioned, will be connected or will be connected to these ports in which the offtake consumers are located, has been included in a Royal Decree Law as a specific mandate to the TCO. Also, it is not only, let's say, like paperwork. There is in a regulation as a rank as law a clear mandate to the TCO to work on this network. So, I mean, a lot of challenges, uncertainties, but if we see where we were 2 years ago in terms of regulation and where we are right now, we can clearly conclude that it is not only a matter of words, it is a matter of facts that the Spanish authorities are working in creating a good regulatory framework for developing this industry.
Thank you very much, David. I think we have some more last questions from the online audience. Mr. Engelmann?
So from the audience, for sure, it's always difficult from the online and offline side. If to Genscher ask, and this is always a very interesting question because it's done the last 3 years, what is actually the biggest factor driving now investments in green hydrogen projects? What is the most important bottleneck the market will expect to be resolved? So what's the driver of the biggest factor? Here's one.
The first question is what's the biggest driver is certainly regulations. One point we haven't covered today because even this day has only limited time available is what is happening on the demand side right now. When we look at Refuel EU, for example, or Fuel EU Maritime and the provisions which are in there, that they create a huge demand for green fuels, and lots of this is going to be hydrogen based in one form or the other. So what is driving the market in the moment is that you for the first time see, if you look at the shipping industry, and that's the best example right now, when you look at the shipping industry, what is happening there with the need to decarbonize an entire sector which is responsible for a huge amount of CO2 worldwide. This is something where you can really see for the first time offtake requirements being built up and need for agreements being concluded. So the first question is certainly answered. It's the demand side which is driven by regulatory framework, which is amended and changing.
Do you want to add your view on that?
Sure. I mean, the question is rather what is blocking the investments. But to be in a positive way, of course, I think it's, and you mentioned the right things. I think another interesting aspect is the RED 3 regulation, which is just upcoming. So that's going to be the masterpiece of for the off-takers and all the industries that's already looking at it. But what I think also what's always missed, so the regulation kicks in where the hydrogen is needed and sanctuating the off-takers. What I think is more needed is to really provide a market for green products at the end. So whatever is being produced with green electricity, green fuels, green hydrogen, whatever, has a higher cost, but also has an additional value, but there's no market around it. And then we are in international competition. So the competition is also blocking industry from bringing these more expensive products on the market because they're insecure if they really have a market. The first market is on steel, green steel, where the car manufacturers were asked before if they want green steel, and they said yes, and now they're demanding green steel. So that's one first step, but I think there's more to be developed on chemical side, on fertilizer, and all different kinds of products.
I dare to also cast the view of Tim, although we are a little bit running over the time. But Tim, perhaps you want to add your view, representing a technology provider, also let's say focusing on decentralized generation. Do you have an additional opinion on the question just raised?
On what is blocking it or what is driving it? Which one?
Only positive.
Exactly, only positive. I think, I mean, what is driving it, like apart from what was mentioned, the like regulation and also the market for these green products that's slowly emerging, is also, I think, just realizing that we can do it. I think there's an optimism when we see these smaller projects, where we see these pilot projects that work, where we see even companies that many of us maybe 5 years ago believed couldn't change as quickly, changing and investing and committing, as we see the drive toward net zero and the whole industries kind of edging each other on, and like there's this spillover effect. You know, if you look at, for example, at like recycling in the beverages industry, like once one company commits, there's a certain pressure for others to commit as well, if our mindset really changes. And I think that is something super positive, that the innovators, if they have a certain cloud, can really inspire their peers to follow suit, because we have seen now that it can generate a competitive advantage to have green products and to be at net zero earlier than others, and to invest in environmental innovation. And I think that's a really, really positive change in the last few years.
Luc, handing over to you.
Yeah, I think maybe I would see some in the history. So in 2017, we founded the company, and of course, there was no legislation driving this. But what has driven us was really the idea that we want to give our children a better future. Not to save the planet, because the planet will save itself, but really to give our children a better future. So if you see the CO2, the climate change, probably the 1.5 degrees we cannot achieve anymore. So we are going to something which we do not know. That is how we started thinking in a small group of entrepreneurs to say, what can we do? And let's really specialize on something, and let's do something impactful. And that is where the company was coming from, to say we are going to be a producer of green hydrogen, and really going to bring en masse green hydrogen all over the globe. We will encourage others to follow us. So we enjoy to see more and more competitors on the market from everywhere. And so that is how we started, what drove us. And of course, this is still today driving us, but now we are supported, of course, by the regulation framework. So good that it is.
Udo, famous last words.
I make it very simple. I'd say there's going to be investment, so projects, real life projects like yours. If demand meets supply and agrees on a price that's going to be paid for a product, and then I think people will realize, sorry, I'm trying to come on a positive note here, trying to realize that the product is probably a bit more expensive than what people think. And I see a lot of studies, and I got question marks. But as you said, I think the alternative will always be far more expensive, and that's what we all, as a society, need to realize and commit to doing that.
I would add to that. I would say, in the long term, the sun and the wind is not charging a fee for using it. In the long term, I think it will be cheaper to use green electricity or green energy sources for our society. And to add a personal touch to it, I lived in India for some time, and I was, walking around in dirt and heat, and everything smelled. And my personal experience was our planet is like really polluted right now. Not in Munich, in downtown, or not on nice places in the Western world, but on the other side of the planet there is so much dirt, and we have to do something. And that was my personal story. At the very beginning, I co-founded a clean tech solution company providing an energy storage component, and I quickly realized that's nice, and it has a certain purpose, but it will not change the world. What we have in common over here, hydrogen can really make a switch to a better future for all of us, not only for investors, and of course I'm representing investors today, and I'm really convinced that hydrogen is a great area to invest money because it will pay off. However, deeply inside of me, I am convinced we can change the world to a better place. Simple words, but that's behind Senco.
Nothing to add, I think. Thank you very much. And I think we are now at the point where we can conclude this wonderful event for today. Let me thank all of you for participating in this very, very interesting event. All of those of you who joined online, let me assure you, you will be provided with the result of our break questionnaire in due course, as we lawyers say, and also the recording and the slides of this event will be circulated to all participants. A very, very big thank you to all of those panel members for this very interesting contributions and your specific views. I think also thank you to Madrid, thank you to you, Tim, and to Berlin, where we had our initial speaker, Mr. Mansmann, and also to Mr. Al-Mansour. Wrapping up this, various elements have been looked at. We focused on generation, transport, consumption, and financing of green hydrogen, but there are so many topics more to talk about. Those of you who are attending in presence here, I kindly invite you to do that, to continue with some fresh drinks and food, which we have prepared for you. And all others, we invite to come to us potentially in person next year, when we will for sure continue with this very successful event. That's from our side. Thank you on behalf of Watson Farley for attending us. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks also from KGAL side. Thanks to the audience. And what we can say is, whatever we discuss, what's coming in the future, the time to act is really now. Next year, we're going to start and we see then the challenges what come out next year. So thanks a lot also to Watson Farley.